Hi everybody, my name is Rowena Summer-Sinha. I am not speaking to you now, I have the privilege of speaking on the last panel of the day, so you'll hear more from me then. But it's my great privilege to introduce our next speaker, who is, I think it was Yvonne this morning who talked about male allies for women in sport. And Paul's been an amazing ally for me. He's been an amazing ally, I think, for Laura and Tara in creating Wimena. But he was a professional footballer for nearly 20 years, playing for clubs such as Tottenham Hotspur, which is also my team, another one, Burnley, and also Norwich City, whilst also gaining 40 caps internationally for Northern Ireland. He made over 300 appearances and was a key member of 2 championship-winning teams and rose to the pinnacle of English football. He is also a published author of the ironically entitled book, The Stupid Footballer is Dead. He's kindly got one here. I'm just going to do a bit of a plug for it right now. Paul has recently finished his studies, which means he is the first person in history to play in the Premier League and qualify with a master's in sports psychology. I didn't know that. He is with us today to share what you can learn from the most ruthless and competitive industry on the planet. So please join me in giving a huge welcome to Paul McVeigh.
Thank you very much, Rowena. Listen, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Laura and Tara, for asking me to come along and speak today. All I'd say is I have 15 minutes. It's a privilege to be the only keynote speaker today. My only problem is trying to share anything in 15 minutes. I'm Irish, as you can tell from the clothes, and I actually have my yellow socks on as well, just to complete the Irish flag. So I know it's going to be challenging, but we'll see what we can do in 15 minutes. So let's get straight into the audience participation. If you have a mobile device, please use it. Please scan the QR code if you'd like to get involved in today's session. And there will be a prize for the first team that goes onto the board. We can see when people start to type. So there will be a prize. Whoever's the first team, make sure you declare it. If you've got your team up, there's definitely a prize for the first person who's going to get their team up on the board. And then that person, once they tell them, who's United? Who said United? Okay, round of applause for my friend over here. There's no sympathy for Man United in the room. It's my book. I said it's a prize. I didn't say it's a good prize. I just said you're getting a prize. But anyway, listen, it's just to get the technology working, but let's move quickly because this session is going to fly. You can imagine being a professional athlete for nearly 20 years, very goal-driven, very, very target-orientated. In the next 13 minutes, 44 seconds, I'm going to try and get a couple of objectives across, and we're going to explore these. You need to understand what is in our own belief system. We've all walked into this room with a completely different set of beliefs from all the different parts of the world we've come from, and we all have a different belief system. Do we all have the same? No, it's all different. So I suppose the rhetorical question is, who has the right set of beliefs? And it's maybe all of us, or none of us, but they dictate every aspect of our lives, and we're going to explore that. And of course, from my background, elite sport, how do you get to the world-class level of playing at Tottenham Hotspur, playing in the Premier League, playing international? Well, actually, maybe we should understand what is a belief. So if you have just got involved in the session, maybe tell me what you think is a belief. Because beliefs are running our lives. They will dictate what you just had for food. Did you go for the salad option? Were you like me, you had 3 cookies at the back of the room earlier? That will dictate what's going into your mouth, your food, your drink. It will dictate your level of finances, what you think you're worth, your self-esteem, your self-belief. So what is a belief? Please tell me. And again, for time purposes, we're going to touch on it very quickly, share a couple of things that your values, it's your opinions, your moral compass. I'm going to say it really simply and succinctly. It's your truth. Whatever you believe to be true. So, let me give you a little bit of a background. I grew up, as you can tell, with this Irish accent. I grew up in Belfast, actually more precisely in West Belfast. This is when I was a young boy with my Aunt Jean. Amazing woman. I want to share a really brief story of how my Aunt Jean, when she was, I think she'd already been living in America, and she'd been there for quite a few years, and just before, the day before I joined Tottenham Hotspur in July '94, My dad, my Aunt Jean and myself were sitting around our kitchen table, and my dad was saying to Jean, tell Paul the story, tell Paul the story. She's like, no. He goes, tell Paul the story. I was like, go on, Jean. She went, okay. Basically, do you remember like X Factor, that kind of Britain's Got Talent, like a singing competition? My Aunt Jean, when she was just 19 years old, was an amazing singer, entered like a 60s style version of the X Factor singing competition. Anyway, very long story short, she got to the final, and it was a final against another girl who was competing for this, and the prize for the winner of this competition was a recording contract, a 1-year recording contract with Decca Records. If you know anything about music, Decca Records is the best of the best. And my Aunt Jean won this competition, absolutely won the prize of this recording contract and turned it down. As a 19-year-old girl, young woman, she turned down this, and I could tell from the tears in her eyes she was starting to get emotional. And I said, why did you turn it down, Jean? And she said, because it didn't come with a pension. She was a civil servant, and she didn't want to take that risk of going down that route, so she stayed in her safe job, and she didn't take the prize. Do you know who came second? Dana. Amazing. Madonna had an amazing singing career. And just as I was leaving to embark on my professional footballing career, my Aunt Jean said to me, she goes, Paul, don't do what I did. Don't stay within yourself. Really reach for the stars. Shoot for the moon. Go as far as you can and see where it takes you. And I remember the very next day, I got on the boat, crossed to Tottenham Hotspur, and I joined an amazing club with world-class people. Our manager was a World Cup winner in Ozzy Ardiles. We had this superstar, global superstar called Jurgen Klinsmann. On my first day, I trained with this superstar. He'd already won the World Cup with Germany, and I trained with Jurgen Klinsmann on my first day. Everyone else might have been thinking, this is amazing, but not me. Because for whatever reason, as a 16-year-old kid from Belfast, I had some sort of inferiority complex, and I remember training with Jurgen, as you can see from that screenshot. I remember looking at him thinking, if that's what it takes to be a professional footballer, a Premier League footballer, an international footballer, all the things I wanted to be, there is no way in the world I could ever do that. And for the next couple of years, I carried around this inferiority complex, this limiting belief of what I thought was possible for me. This is a much longer story, and I would love to share so much more with you. And when I am speaking for the biggest corporates around the world, I do go into much more detail. But because we've got a really condensed version of it today, I'm going to share one other thing before, hopefully if we have time at the end, I'll come back to my Aunt Jean and Jurgen Klinsmann. But actually, one of the things that I've learned over the 30 years, and Rowena, talked about my master's in psychology, what you do is you just try and synthesize all of this information around elite performance. What do the best world-class performers do? How do they operate? How do they deal with success? How do they deal with setbacks? How do they strategize? What's their language like? And ultimately, I've summed it up in this 3-step framework that if you want to, you can use, but I really, truly believe, and this is my belief, that this is how you achieve world-class leadership. You need to dream about what's possible. Laura and Tara are dreaming about what's possible for Wimena. Then you need to believe it. Do you even believe that it's possible, whatever you want to achieve in your life? Is it possible? Do you think it's possible? And of course, if you're very lucky, if you work really hard, if you negotiate all the obstacles along the way, you might just have achieved it. But that 3-step model, dream, believe, achieve. We've talked about what is a belief. It's almost your truth. How do we form beliefs? Well, actually, there's quite a few different ways that you can form beliefs, and there's actually 3 ways. So the first way that you'll form belief is just by repeatedly saying it, or maybe hearing it constantly. So you can imagine a child that's constantly told, you're never going to do anything, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too whatever. If that child's constantly getting told that, you can imagine that very easily will just adopt that as a belief. And because no one else was telling me after I met Jurgen Klinsmann that I wasn't capable of being a professional footballer, this is just my own internal dialogue. And just because I continually said it to myself, I was limiting myself of what was possible. So that's the first way. The second way we actually form beliefs is by witnessing a really intense incident. And this guy on the right, you might not know him, his name's Rory Allen. Rory was part of our youth team, and whenever I was coming through at Tottenham Hotspur, Rory was like the best player in my year. So as a first-year youth team player, he got into the second-year team. As a second-year youth team player, he got the first pro contract. Then in his first-year pro, our first-year pro at 18, he made his debut. live on Sky Sports against Manchester United, against the Beckhams, the Keanes, the Scholes, the Giggs, at White Hart Lane, under the lights, and after 35 minutes, Rory Allen scored against the best team in the country at the time. And I remember going crazy. All of the fans in the stadium, 35,000 fans, all going crazy watching Rory Allen score. And I remember watching my mate score against the best team in the country. And it was like a little flick of a switch. And I remember thinking, wow, if he can do that, so can I. And within 3 months, I made my Premier League debut, and then I scored on my home debut. And I don't think that would have happened if Rory hadn't done what he'd done. So how I changed my belief was by witnessing that incident, and it really did change my life. The last way we form beliefs is just through someone else's opinion. Someone might take today's session and go, well, for world-class leadership, it's about dreaming, believing, and achieving. That could be a belief you take from today. One of the things that I did when I was 18, I had a conversation with my mum, and she said, Paul, you should try yoga. And I was like, I don't really fancy it. She goes, no, honestly, it's really good for football. So I did. I bought like a video, because, anyway, don't worry. It's like streaming on YouTube. So I remember watching this every single day, doing my yoga at home when I was at Tottenham Hotspur. When I joined Norwich City, I was suddenly an established first-team player, playing 40 games, scoring goals. I felt like I was brave enough to bring my yoga mat into the training ground in front of 25 football players. What do you think was the response I got when I did that? They didn't welcome me with open arms, but what was interesting was the first day I brought it in and I put it to the side of the physio room, started doing my stretches, sun salutations, all the rest of it, I got dog's abuse. I was literally, people were throwing things at me, verbal, physical, water, everything, just for doing yoga. Anyway, went in, trained, put my yoga mat in my locker, came back after training, cut it up into 1,000 pieces, hadn't I? I'm like, right, the more you get to know me, Laura, Thayer know me, I'm a stubborn little so-and-so. Went down to the shop, bought another one, brought it in the second day, did my same thing, more abuse. This time tried to hide the yoga mat in the little corner of the training ground. They found it, one of those big metal bins, they set it on fire. So I'm like, right, they're not going to beat me. Third yoga mat, brought it in. Third time, same thing. I'm like, not even going to try. Put it in my locker. They brought it into the car park. Started doing big skids and donuts on it, completely ruined it. The fourth time, I went and got another one, brought it in. I think they just got bored by the end. But what was interesting was, I understood this process of change. And it was these 3 pillars of change. And when you understand that to try and change anything, the way like Laura and Thayer are trying to change the entire landscape with Wimena, the first thing you'll get is opposition. And I'm sure you get that a lot in this room. And when you get that opposition, it's then how quickly can you get to the second pillar, which is all about curiosity. Because whenever I was doing my yoga, I think they just got bored until one of the guys poked his head around the corner and went, "Wee man, what are you doing?" I went, "Just doing some stretching." Anyway, you can see the little smug look on my face. The third pillar. What do you think happened after about 5-6 weeks of me doing yoga every day? Started joining. Namaste with me. They did namaste with me. They all started joining me. So actually, just because I was doing it, they decided to adopt my opinion that yoga was good. So this is a really fast run through, but remember, say it with me, what are the 3 steps for world-class performance? Dream. I'm not going to put the second one on. Who can remember it? Believe. You have been listening. Third step? Achieve. Okay, very good. Rowena very kindly plugged my book at the start, and although I have already given away a copy, and this is not a sales pitch, by the way, although it is available in all good bookstores. If you want to download a copy of the book, it's just simply a book on mental performance, elite sport, how you can bring it together for the corporate world. So if you'd like a copy, please use your phone, download a copy of the book if you want to. There's the QR code to download for free if you might like it, if you might want to share it with anyone else who's interested in mindset, psychology, football, elite sport. Feel free to download that, and I'll give you 20 seconds because I have precisely 2 minutes and 11 seconds left. And I know Laura is like that. If I don't finish on time, there's going to be a big hook coming off on stage. But I just want to say thank you. Oh, I forgot the story about Jürgen, quickly. I remember playing in a charity game a few years ago, 25 years after I'd first met Jurgen Klinsmann. It was Norwich City against Inter Milan, and Jurgen Klinsmann was playing for Inter Milan in a charity game, and this happened.
2-0 down. Here's Edie through the midfield. He's playing well today, Edie. He tries to set Huckabee on the left. Huckabee's going to get there this time. Left edge of the penalty area, plays it across, chance for Ewan Robson in return. McVeigh goes around the goalkeeper and scores the
But the best part of that day was meeting Jurgen afterwards, because it was probably the proudest moment of my life when I was standing there with a guy who 25 years before was just like up here, and I finally felt like I was on the same level, and so it was the proudest moment of my life. And I just want to finish off just by saying, going back to my Aunt Jean, the most amazing woman. She didn't take the recording contract, but she did do this.
Now our oldest graduate this year, Jean McVeigh, 76 years young, began her undergraduate degree with us in her late 50s, a mere 20 years ago, while working at Harvard University as a full-time employee. As she wrote to her advisor, "Like Don Quixote, I plan to follow the quest to the end, or mine, whichever came first. Happily, I have arrived at the finish line relatively unscathed, having gained greatly from the wisdom of my professors."
And it's 76 years. And as the clock strikes 0, at 76 years old, my Aunt Jean graduated from Harvard. And if that doesn't make you believe that anything is possible, I don't know what will. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Everyone asleep from your lunch? Those French fries were delicious, or chips as you call them, right? Chips? Is that right? Okay. Well, we call them French fries, and they were delicious. And Paul, I don't know where you went, but my favorite football team is the New England Patriots.
Same here.
Okay, good. Same. So I'm very excited today to be, so my name is Thayer Lavielle. I work at Wasserman, and I lead our women's group called The Collective, and we are focused really on bringing advocacy and kind of advisory services to just drive investment in women across sports, music, and entertainment. And so it's my pleasure today to be able to host this incredible panel around role models. But as I think you guys just kind of come up, there's no grand entrance or like drum beat, so just work your way. I'm going to introduce these incredible ladies as we go. Okay, each of these women has carved out an inspiring path in and of themselves, demonstrating incredible resilience, vision, profound impact on the world around them. So many of you guys in this room are also incredible role models to those around you, and I wish we could hear everybody's story today. They represent the best of what's possible when talent meets unwavering commitment. First, we have Lucy Shuker, where there's Lucy, a name synonymous with perseverance and triumph in the world of sport. Lucy is a phenomenal Paralympian, a multiple Grand Slam champion, a 3-time Paralympian medalist, right? Am I right in that? I'm making stuff up. Okay, well, I'm just gonna make it up. She's amazing. She is an Olympic medalist in wheelchair tennis. Her journey is a testament to incredible strength, both on and off the court, inspiring countless individuals globally with her unwavering determination and competitive spirit. And she's training to go to a competition in Italy coming up, and then she's going to hopefully qualify for Wimbledon. Right? I have that right. So buy your tickets now. Okay, next we have, I'd like to introduce Dawn Venturas. Right here. Dawn is a visionary leader and powerhouse. She has an athlete herself in field hockey and played for Team Greece, although she's got a couple different nationalities going on, which we'll get into. She's also a visionary leader and powerhouse in the coaching sector. She started this women's coaching organization that is in the Middle East. It's the biggest that there ever has been in women's coaching. It's amazing. And she's consistently driven positive change, fostering growth and collaboration wherever she goes. And she is currently, and I believe the only, woman coach of the men's Saudi Paralympic swimming team.
Of any Saudi male national.
Of any Saudi male national team. How about her? Okay. Then we have Adriana Brownlee. She just came to us, by the way, I thought I was jet lagged. She just flew in from Nepal. Where she was just on base camp, or at base camp, I'm not sure what you say. She's an extraordinary mountaineer. She started this at age 9 and completed some incredible feat of 3 peaks or something in 22 hours with your dad when you were little, right? Yeah, I mean, right. Her incredible achievements in high altitude climbing speak volumes about her courage, discipline, and mental fortitude. She was the youngest woman to climb the K2. Adriana's story reminds us of what enough grit, even the highest summits, are within reach. And finally, we have Sarah Bern. Sarah is an icon in the world of rugby, a celebrated athlete who has achieved immense success on the international stage as a key player for both England and the Saracens. Am I saying that correctly? Okay.
Sorry, it's actually Bristol. I can't have any press release going out, sorry. My apologies.
Fresh news, it's Bristol. I can say that one. Sarah's power, skill, and leadership have been instrumental in countless victories. She was World Player of the Year. She has 2 silver medals in the World Cup. She's about to go play into another World Cup this summer and comes off of another Six Nations title. Congratulations. True professional, pushing boundaries and setting new standards in her sport. So my work here is done. Anyway, so we are going to transition to sitting mode now. Is this on? Hello? Okay. So hi guys. Hi ladies. Awesome ladies. I am thrilled to be here and thrilled to really be able to sit with all of you guys and to talk about the power of role models. Each of you guys in your own lives have obviously had role models, men, women, other peers, teammates, people that you looked up to. I would love actually for each of you guys to think about looking back in your life, like who is that one person that sticks out to you as someone who inspired you to be your very best self? Just as Paul was saying, like we all have these limiting beliefs. Who was it that said, no, go bigger, go farther, you can do this? I'm going to start with you, Lucy.
I'd actually say my other half, who's in the room, Amos. I think so my background is I'm a T4 paraplegic, so I had a motorbike accident when I was 21. I was incredibly fortunate that my parents at the time have been amazing and supported me and encouraged me, so they gave loads of values and pushed me to try. So my parents were massive for me in just those first few days. And then I kind of came upon tennis not to be a Paralympian, just to find me again, to do a sport, to become what I felt was more normal. And then I got into tennis and became quite good at it. But I'd say AIMS actually challenges me every day to be better, to not listen to others, their negativity, to who restrict me or who tell me that you can't do something. And it's like, actually, you can do this. Like, keep striving, keep being better, be better than those that are being, that are kind of putting myself in a box. Like, what do I want? And I want to be, I haven't won a Grand Slam. I still want to win a Grand Slam. And maybe this year it's at Wimbledon. But she's the one that keeps pushing me to keep striving to be, reach my goals.
That's an amazing story. And also, I think the fact that you were coming off of something that many people would see as really debilitating to your mental, and emotional stability, to one's mental and emotional stability. The fact that you had parents that really pushed you along and now have a support system that continues to propel you forward is a great thing. And here's to Wimbledon.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Yes, we're all hoping for that. Adriana, tell us about you were climbing with your dad, so I'm assuming that dad had a good impact on you, but who do you look back on and think, that person really mattered to me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll probably mirror with the parents. They were the number one support growing up. And you mentioned the Three Peaks Challenge when I was 9. It was my dad's idea to do the challenge. It was my first mountaineering challenge ever. And he threw me into the deep end. I think no one under the age of probably 15 had ever done this. And even for adults, it was difficult. But he was there by my side through the whole thing. And we started on Snowdon. That was fine, smashed out of the park. Moved on to Scaffold Pike, and that was also great. We were feeling good. We were gaining good momentum. And then we got to the last peak, which was Ben Nevis, which was the hardest and the highest out of all of them. And I remember the first thing that happened as soon as I got out of the car, ate a banana and threw it all up straight away. I was extremely nervous. There was just a bad feeling in my stomach about this mountain. But I kept pushing on, and we made it. We got up to about 200 meters from the summit. And at that point, I started shaking, and I was uncontrollable. I was so cold. I didn't really know what was going on at the time. And I remember these people walking past us who were also going for their summit push, and they started putting layers and layers over me. I had everything in my backpack on. I had my jackets, gloves, whatever, but it wasn't working. And so my dad, he took my temperature, and at this point, I was borderline hypothermic. I was 34 degrees. And he sat me down on a rock. And at 9 years old, you don't really know what hypothermia is really, what could happen, but obviously my dad knew the dangers of going up. But he sat me down and he said, look, Adri, you've got one of two choices you can make right now. He's like, either you can go for this summit and you'll be the youngest ever to do the 3 peaks, or you can come back down to safety. And so I looked at him, I said, okay, Papa, let's go down. Let's quit the challenge. And so we got back down, and obviously I cried and I thought, I've let myself down. But he said to me, Adri, this question that I asked you has just shown me that you've got the mindset to be a mountaineer. You know when to turn around, and you know how to make safe decisions, and you're going to carry this with you for the rest of your life. And so I did. And my father was the one that, asked me these difficult questions, that put me in difficult situations, and that got me to where I am today. And just last year, I finished my 14 8,000-meter peaks. I finished on Shisha Pangman, Tibet, and did that without supplementary oxygen. But he was the one that pushed me to try without oxygen, pushed me to go to new levels. And then the other one, just quickly, is my partner, Galje Sherpa, who I met on the mountains on my very first peak in the Himalayas in Pakistan. And he's the most incredible Sherpa or person in the world. He's got the world's highest solo rescue on Mount Everest at 8,400 meters. He took a Malaysian man on his back on his own. So to climb with him has been incredible, and he's also been my motivator and pushed me to go on.
Wow. That's amazing. No pressure.
I wish I went before Adriana, to be honest.
Go ahead, Sarah. I'm sure you have some great stories.
No mountains, not for me. I guess my inspiration, family, is always a big one. They're always there. They allow you to go to camps. They push you through whatever you need to go through. My gorgeous partner as well. Every day, if you have a little bit of a wobble, you pick up the phone, you speak to your partner. They're the ones that say, what are you going on about? You're fine. Go back out there. But actually, most recently, I managed to work with Ilona Maher. So Ilona Maher, if you don't know who she is, she's this amazing sevens rugby player, a US rugby star, and she is absolutely smashing barriers. She's actually now the most famous rugby player in the whole world. So she smashes all the men out the park by not just like a little bit, by about 3 to 4 million. She smashes them out of the park. So to see a female role model who is she's very strong in stature. She is incredibly athletic, and her whole brand is about how beauty and beast can coexist together. And for me, I think growing up, I had brilliant role models like Serena Williams. Like, she was a big role model to me, how she dominated for years, and she was muscular and she was extremely athletic, and how she dealt with a lot of controversy growing up, in always being in the limelight. She was amazing. But most recently, I worked with Ilona, and you couldn't tell. She's a lovely, down-to-earth person, and she just radiates confidence. And that's probably the biggest thing I think in women. We don't have confidence, really. We kind of do. Like, we're very good at pretending we have confidence, but inside you're like, oh, did I just mess that up?
A lot of imposter syndrome.
Do I look bad? Like, it's a lot of that stuff. And she's very good at just being like, why do we think like this? And actually, we don't need to think like that. Like, we can celebrate the successful stuff we do. We can celebrate each other's successful things. We don't have to compete against each other. Women very much are kind of put against each other in this world, and we can rise each other up rather than bring each other down. And she was amazing, and she just whispered to me. She left. We had a lovely season with her, and we're gonna be playing against each other in the first World Cup game, which is gonna be quite scary because she's a brilliant athlete. But she just said, "Go bigger." Like literally, when you said it, like Alona whispered, she was like, "You're great. Go bigger." Like yeah, she was like, sorry, get emotional. I am emotional as well. Don't panic. I'm okay. This isn't uncommon, and if I do it again, don't panic. But she said, like, you've got amazing personality. Go out there, and she goes, I'm going to tell the world as well that you're amazing. And like she does, and she still does. And even with things that I'm like, what? You don't need to do that. It's okay. Like we had like an award, and it was for this, a player of the year. And she's like, who's been your best player of the year? She like literally tags Sarah Bern, like everything. She tags Sarah Bern. I'm like, Alona, you're embarrassing me now. Can you stop it? Can you stop tagging me?
It's a very British reaction.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
But yeah, she definitely, for me, is someone that inspires me every day and someone I really looked up to. But also, it's amazing to have such a close connection with someone that you inspire to be so much.
That's great. Dawn.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. Well done, good job. I'd just like to say thank you to the sponsors, Aramco, Wasserman, Thayer, my fellow panelists, everybody in the crowd, especially the male allies, the men that are in the room. Can we please give them a small round of applause? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the family, and I'm going to dive into the community. For where I am in the region in the Middle East, family and community go side by side, but it should be like that all over the world. In 1980, I'm going to take you way back before I was born, the country I grew up in, so one of my nationalities, won an Olympic gold medal in field hockey. So it's no surprise that you introduced me as someone who played field hockey. The impact of their legacy led a whole generation of youth athletes from school into clubs, regional and national level. However, as inspiring and as impactful as they were, because I followed in those footsteps, it's the youth that are inspiring to me. And there's one special little girl that I'd like to highlight, a little girl that I went to school with. And one of the reasons I do what I do as a coach is to caretake for the next generation. It was a bitterly cold winter morning in Zimbabwe, and we were playing a field hockey game. And I was 16, and I was umpiring a 14-year-old's game, as the seniors do for the juniors. And this little girl had her knee blown out. The ambulance had to come, had to take her away, and our job as seniors were obviously to stop the game, look after the rest of the team, make sure she was taken care of. A year and a bit later, this little girl qualified for her first Olympic Games, and she decided to specialize in swimming. She then proceeded to go on to 5 consecutive Olympic Games and become Africa's most decorated Olympian in history. The little girl that I'm talking about is today's IOC President-elect, Kirsty Coventry. Wow. So she is my role model.
That's amazing. That is quite a story. You knew her when? So understanding, you guys are all from different backgrounds. You've seen all sorts of parts of the world, literally from the highest peaks to rugby fields, to tennis stadiums, and beyond. Understanding that we have like an incredibly vast digital landscape today in social media, how does that play into your own kind of development of how you are a role model for people? Like, how much do you take that into account as you're out in the world? Like Ilona Mer, for example, is very conscious of her community that she has built and very intentional with that in the best way. But also, what feeds you as you're going out into the world and understanding, like, what is it that's feeding you to be the best you can be, other than the people in your life? Like, what kinds of stuff are you reading to be the best role model? What kinds of stuff are you ingesting to be the best role model, or ignoring, equally important? Like, what are you not doing to be the best role model? I'm going to start, Dawn, with you.
Again, I don't know how much time you guys have. Thank you for the question. So earlier on in one of the panels this morning, they were talking about how the Middle East or that region aligns everything with a vision. So I've spent 17 years in the United Arab Emirates, and they had a 2020 vision, which they've largely executed on, to create a city of the future, to create something wonderful and inspiring, world's tallest building. Everything you know about Dubai is real. Like it's that flashy, it's that outlandish. And most recently, I've stepped into Saudi Arabia. So their vision 2030, once again, is so inspiring, and more so for the next generation, which is something my Saudi Arabian colleagues were talking about before. What we do today and the seeds that we plant and the history that we write and the legacy that they develop for themselves is not just inspiring to be the first, but in order to be impactful and create that vision and beyond so it is sustainable, it's so important to be able to get everybody on board and align with that vision and execute. So that's what inspires me, and it's effective, it works.
Tell me, how do you apply that to the role as the only woman coach of a men's Saudi national team?
Okay, I came prepared for this question.
Yes.
I brought a prop.
Oh.
One of these. You may recognize this as a gold medal. This gold medal in particular comes from the Kingdom Paralympic Swimming Championship. And to answer your question, it was given to me by one of the athletes on my team. And he had won several of these gold medals, so it's not a big deal that he gave me one. But it is kind of a big deal, because as we were walking out of the competition with his father, it's a very family-orientated environment, he turned to me and he said, "Dawn, I want you to take this gold medal." He's only 16 years old. And I said, "No, Turkey, this is your gold medal, you keep it." And at age 16, young Saudi man, he says to me, "Coach Dawn, when we work together, we win together." So for these young men who will become the leaders of Saudi Arabia tomorrow, to understand what it's like to have a female in a leadership position and work with her to achieve success so that it is a collective and everybody wins, that is what it's all about, really. So, yeah.
That's great. Right? Adriana, let's start with you. Do you, like, when you're thinking about social, digital, where you're being fed in your soul and what you're reading, ignoring, all of those things, how do you do that? Because I can imagine when you're, like, up in clean air, like, there's a great signal or there's no signal on your phone. I'm not sure what, but...
Yeah, there's a mix of stuff. I mean, yeah, really, social media, the digital world, it's the future of and it's the now as well. And I think, you know, as role models, as influencers, whatever you want to call yourself, having this digital world in the palm of your hand can be incredible, can give vast opportunities, endless, limitless opportunities, the ability to advocate and bring things, positive things to the world that can be viral in minutes. But it can also be very dangerous, you know, to have this all so close to you, especially in the mountains where you're facing life and death pretty much in front of you. Very high pressured situations. There's some peaks that have 35% death rate. The last thing you need is some negative messages or media on your phone. But it's something that you've just got to learn to adapt to. Adaptability is one of the biggest lessons I learned in the mountaineering world. And it's a great lesson for anyone when it comes to kind of the digital side of things. Role models, influencers, they bring a lot of positivity to the digital world. It's one of the good things about it. But sometimes people make mistakes. Some people can say the wrong thing. Some people can bring negativity as well, even if they don't mean to. And kind of the ability to sort between what is great and what is not so great can be difficult. But it's a skill that I think we have to learn and adapt and take on. And yeah, you just kind of have to ignore those bad sides. And on the mountains, we just put the phone away, enjoy the nature, take it all in. You know, we're in some of the most beautiful places in the world. So we try to disconnect from everything and just focus on our one mission and our one goal.
That's amazing. Lucy, what about you?
Yeah, I think way back when I had my accident, there wasn't social media. It was all just being launched. And obviously, I think as a newly injured person, like you feel different, you feel isolated, you're like my confidence disappeared. I was 21 years old and I'd suddenly, who I was I thought I was different. And I think as time's gone on and the world's changed and the social media platforms that we have as individuals and also as the media platforms out there, that we share way more stuff. So then I always say, if you can't see it, how do you know that you can do it yourself? Or you believe in others, you believe in yourself. So hopefully like through the platform that I have, if I can inspire another little Lucy that breaks her back and wants to try wheelchair tennis and suddenly they find that they feel way more inclusive and less different, then that's amazing. Like social media out there is, I use it, I scroll, I'm one of those people. I use it to find the 1% to make impacts that changes for me, whether it's chair technology, like we're always advancing that, making chairs smaller and lighter. Nutrition, I came across Ainsley and Ainsley recently. It's a nutrition supplement. And when I'm getting up at 4 a.m. in the mornings and having to play a match and I've maybe had 4 hours sleep, their stuff, which is apparently all absolutely fine to take, I feel, apparently, it's...
Somebody
makes
take a note. What is this called?
It's called Ainsley and Ainsley. It's just a little night powder. But like sleep and recovery, ability to perform the next day, like mentally way more aware. And sometimes that's on 4 hours sleep. And I'm like, how am I at 45 years old still able to keep up with these 20-year-olds that are chasing my ass, literally, and trying to beat me on a tennis court? So yeah, like to me, social media has the ability to be such a positive thing. And I think we all share always the highs. And sometimes, like for me, I also try and be authentic and share sometimes the lows as well, because there's a lot of losses with a few wins. Let's be honest, tennis is a brutal sport. It's one of those things that I think we can just be authentic and true and share the wins and the losses, the highs, the lows. It's there to be seen.
Do you feel that you've been able, over the journey of, since your accident, of kind of a new coming into yourself, because you are physically differently abled now, do you feel like, you have different abilities or...
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Do you feel like it's incumbent upon you to be a role model at times, even if you don't want to, because of the position that you're in? Or do you feel like, suck it up, buttercup, this is the role you're in? Like,
yeah, I think if you'd asked me like 20 years ago, suck it up, I'd be like tantrums or crying or upset. Sure. But I think that's also natural. I think as a person, you have emotions. We all have emotions. And I, on one hand, I embraced it. I was like, I'm going to walk out of this hospital. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not going to walk out of this hospital at all. I've absolutely done a good one to myself. But then it's also then going, life is still, there's still a life to be lived. And it's like I've met people during the tennis world, like from quite early on to then suddenly be like, you look good in a chair. Oh, and that's coming from me, who's like all of a sudden going, I don't want to be in a chair. I hate being in a chair. I hate how I look. To seeing somebody in a chair going, they look good in it. And then it's like, then I feel like, oh, well, I too could maybe start to look good in a chair, and you get a chair that fits you. And then even I met Georgia today, and she's like, oh my God, your chair's so skinny. And I'm like, but I want you to see me. I don't want you to, yes, you'll naturally see the chair. Sure. But then we naturally have that ability to share that, yeah. I think. And yeah, the social media aspect of it is be authentic and show those positive bits, those negative bits. I don't mind letting people in to know me as a person, and also the hard times that I think we all go through. Mm-hmm. Mine's just a bit different because I had an accident, and that's okay, but it's also going, it's okay, let's not wallow, let's get better, let's be better tomorrow than we are today, let's learn from the mistakes that we make today and be better tomorrow.
I love that. Sarah, when you're thinking about social and how you're showing up for, rugby is having a moment, for sure. Red Roses are definitely having a moment, for sure. When you think about how you're showing up and how social and digital plays into that, Do you feel pressure to show up differently, or do you feel like I'm just who I am? I mean, you seem like I am just who I am, but I just met you, so maybe you're not.
I just cried on stage.
Yes, exactly. Maybe you need some Ainsley and Ainsley. Or...
Yeah, I know. Get me some of that powder.
I'll share the details.
QR code, please.
Yeah, I think traditionally, so rugby is a very male-dominated sport. It's seen as hyper-masculine. It's not seemed as feminine at all. So women's rugby, in terms of the negative side of it, we've faced a lot of it. We face it every day, even within unions. There's arguments all the time. Why is it not equal to the men? There's all different logistics to it, but we do face the negative side, especially on social media. And I think social media is incredibly powerful, but I think you have to know who you are. And if you ask yourself that question and you go home and you go, who am I? And it's very easy as an athlete. Like it says here, Sarah Bern, England rugby player. And that's who I was. I was a rugby player. And rugby players were serious. They were professional. They did their sport really well. And actually, when you mix that with social media, that's kind of boring. You don't want to see that all the time. It's great to see for inspiration, but you don't know who I am. You could see there's another 30 rugby players who are doing the same thing. So actually you need to do it authentically, and to do it well, go home, ask yourself who you are. If you don't know who you are, that's a good starting point. And likewise, if you don't like who you are, if you don't like the person you are, in terms of you're so driven that you can't have a laugh and a joke, like things like that, okay, that's another starting point. Let's change it. Other people, because if you don't like yourself, it doesn't need to be love, doesn't need to be super the other way. If you don't like yourself, there's no point even trying to share it, because you're going to watch other people on social media and keep criticizing yourself. I'm not good at that, so I can't do that. Or I'm not funny, so I can't post that. Or even just looking at people in bikini pictures, there's so many of them out there on Instagram. I don't look like that. And rugby, I think, is brilliant because you have every single type of person on that pitch. You have players like me, bigger, broader. However, no one else can do what we do on the pitch, because that's what our role is. And if I'm not big, if I'm not strong, if I'm not heavy, I'm going to be a terrible prop, because I'll just get sent into space. And no one wants that. So if I'm not good at that, I can't do it. I can't do my job. When I come into the real world, it's like every single woman in here who watches social media, who watches TV. I don't like the way I look. And that's very real for athletes, because we are very muscular, we are very big. Like, trying to get clothes that fit is incredibly difficult from a women's section. So I think that's something I had to learn was, what do I like about myself? What do I enjoy? What do I like? What am I good at? And actually away from rugby, not as a rugby player, because I can always lean on that. And then that's how I was like, well, actually, I'm good at making people smile. I like smiling. Hope everyone else likes smiling. So I want to help people do that.
Anyone not like smiling?
I did have to get Botox. I did frown too much for a while, so that helps. You have to. So I wanted to help people do that. And I spent years, I was always bigger, so I spent years not really liking my body. I grew up in a house full of women, a number of eating disorders. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. Not just men, this is not me being exclusive to men, this is just my experiences being around women a lot of the time. We're really hard on ourselves for how we look. And it took me this season, I just thought, who cares? Like, who cares? We are winning games back to back to back. We are growing, we are the biggest growing sport. And for me personally, I'm the only prop, so that's my position in the rugby pitch, male or female, to be nominated for World Player of the Year. So, thank you. Yeah.
Amazing.
Someone keeps telling me all the tries I've scored. And for that, you take confidence from what you've done. So if I can take confidence from what I've done and something that's never been done before, I like who I am, I want other people to smile and have fun, and I want to be kind, well, actually, that's all my page is going to show. It doesn't matter if I'm serious, it doesn't matter if I'm silly. And it's a really funny topic, because, sorry, I know I'm talking for ages, so just tell me to shh. But we were, I started to push a lot on social media. I was really inspired by Ilona Maher, and I was like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do what she said. She told me to be myself. I'm going to go be myself. And it's a very brave step to go out there and go, I'm just going to be me. And my friend Jasmine Joyce, she plays for Wales, and we were on BBC, and BBC said, oh, can you do a TikTok dance? Because I did one with the crowd, and BBC didn't know what I was doing, and they just filmed me dancing, which I can tell you now, I didn't find it very flattering, but it wasn't my choice because it went viral. So I had to find it flattering. Anyway, but like I said, I said, oh, how cool would it be? Wales got this massive crowd. They've never got this amount of people before. It's a world record for Wales to be playing at the Principality Stadium, because traditionally they weren't allowed to play in that stadium because they didn't get enough crowd because we're women. That's a different topic. Anyway, and I said, Jazz, shall we do a TikTok? And we did the TikTok. And it was funny. All the presenters liked it. All the crowd loved it. The girls were all buzzing about it. And it went out. And the amount of hate that Jazz got, because Wales had lost the game. But the point of the TikTok was to celebrate the record-breaking crowd that they had and the amazing atmosphere they created. It wasn't about Jazz not taking it seriously. And actually, people keep going, would you do that again? Would you do that? Oh, yes, I would do it again, because it's shown that actually connection in women's sport, being who you are, being happy, being able to celebrate other people is way more important at this point in time than the results. And I think actually sometimes that's what men's sport need to remember. It's about uplifting each other. It's not always about destroying each other, feeling sad and serious all the time.
There's a lot in there, yes.
That's the end of my TED Talk.
There's a lot in there that I could riff about, but I do find that this moment in time in women's sports, what I really appreciate, and I have a 16, almost 17-year-old daughter, is the way that young women uplift each other today around sport. Is like when I was younger playing sport, it was like, that's my position and I'm coming for it. And that is not at all the case today. I might be, my daughter will lead from the bench as well as she'll lead from the field, which is incredibly inspiring. And I think social media has had a big part of that. Adriana, I'd like to understand this concept. We were talking a little bit, or also heard from Paul talking about this, these limiting beliefs, right? You're scaling a mountain. There's probably not a lot of room. There's you can't give a lot of daylight to limiting beliefs because no whoopsie daisies allowed there, right? So how do you shut stuff out, and how do you what's advice for us as you're when you're going through everyday self-doubt, which is human?
Yep.
How do you teach me, Yoda?
I mean, what you're saying, Sarah, about having that self-belief and that self-confidence is number one. Without that, you're not going to get very far. And when you're on the mountains, it's that very, very thin line, and there's no error. You can't make mistakes up there. One detachment of the rope and you're gone 3,000 meters down a face. And that, to overcome that and to be safe on the mountain, you need to be confident and you need to have that self-confidence. It's incredibly important. And it's something that you have from your role models as well. You pick up from them, you learn great things from them, my parents, my partner, Gelje, and it's something that you kind of grow to gain. And it's something that's quite difficult nowadays, as you were saying, the pressure from social media. Everything on social media looks so easy, looks so nice. There's very few people that will post the true grit and the hard work that goes behind something. Nowadays, I'll look online and it's all, summit photos and happy days and sponsor photos, but there's not much of, I had to write 500 emails just to get $5,000 sponsorship for this climb, or I had to train X amount of days, and, X amount of days I felt like shit, really. I didn't want to go out and train. You don't get that much. So it's kind of about brushing those aside, not comparing yourself to others, because I think we do that way too much, and just believing in what you have inside. And I think that self-belief came from having that goal, having that mindset to just go and do this 14 Peaks challenge. And I knew deep down that I could do it, and I felt unique doing it. I felt like I was one of the only women doing it. I felt strong, I felt powerful. I finally had a platform to talk on social media about mountaineering, and that gave me a lot of self-confidence and a lot of self-belief. And in those hardest moments on the mountain, when there's boulders hurtling at you at 100 kilometers per hour on a vertical face, and you're abseiling and your lives are in the hands of the mountains, you go back to that self-belief and you go back to that positive, amazing human that you are, and you think, I can get through this. I have the power to go through those hardest moments. And also having Gelje by my side, my partner, he just adds that extra element, that extra icing on the cake when he tells me, keep going, just keep pushing, you'll be okay. So that's kind of how I got through it. And I think, it's something that you can take into normal life as well, just having that self-belief.
I'm literally going to print a picture of you next time I'm tired of my Zoom calls and think, this is not what she does all day. That's amazing. Dawn, you have an incredibly varied audience here of people who are creating policies and can help shape, decisions in different organizations. How, you have worked across many different markets, and you work in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and you have grown up in Africa, and you've played for Greece, and all of these things. And here you are in London. What would you say about the things that are needed to create a more inclusive environment from your perspective? Because you have an incredibly varied experience. And perhaps talk a little bit about the coaching organization that you have built, which is super important, I think, for role models.
Thanks, Thayer. You missed something from the list. I was born in London as well. So
Born in London.
Add that to
She's
the
home.
list. So to actually tie in what everyone else has said, visibility, diversity, and inclusion, when we're looking at what I was talking about earlier, which is the Vision 2030, one of the pillars of that vision for Saudi Arabia is a better quality of life for everybody. And I think that should be inclusivity everywhere. And sport really does enable that, especially the discipline of swimming. I'd just like to highlight a success story for Saudi Arabia with regards to the recent Paralympic Games that happened last year in Paris. And they won a gold medal, Abdul Rahman Al-Qarashi, I hope I say his name right, in the T53 chair category. I'm not exactly sure what chair category it's called specifically, but he won a gold medal for Saudi Arabia. So what does that do? It enables him to become a role model for millions of other girls and boys who are maybe just like him or similar to him, but it raises the visibility. To be impactful, I think in today's age where we've moved from radio and TV to broadsheet newspaper coverage of sport, to online and now social media, it's really important for our athletes and our athletes of the future to now have a little bit of ownership on their own legacy that they're creating, and to help teach them how to do that responsibly so that they can become visible and represent the diversity in all of the communities. So as much as you need your facilities and your systems in place, and in Saudi Arabia, we're just building that. We're at the start of that ecosystem, and it's got a way to go. It's going really fast, but what we can tap into at the moment is our athletes. So whether they're driving cars or running races or swimming, you're enabling them to be able to control their narrative, and then that is also a huge part of raising the visibility of sport for everybody.
You guys are four of the most remarkable women I've literally ever met in my whole life. And I'd like to understand, what's next? What's the future that you want to see, coming from your perspectives, for the sporting world? Adriana, I don't know if you're one of the only women that does what you do. I have no idea. This is and I'm sure a lot of other people don't know that world either. But Lucy, I'd like to start with you. Where do you, when you think about what creates just a little bit of a better world for wheelchair tennis, what does that look like? And it could be a million things.
Could be. Inclusivity, I started playing with friends, family, coaches. I had an incredible first coach that took me to qualify for 2 Paralympics. And then I moved on and carried on. But she instilled so many real firm values that even to this day that, I rock up to a tennis court and, you're there on time, you warm up correctly, you're giving it 100% effort, you're trying things. But then in terms of organizations, so the LTA, I think they have a social responsibility to be more inclusive, to drive it from social roots, grassroots, just engaging in just the general population that, who have a disability that want to try tennis. To me, tennis is for everyone. But then it drives all the way up to like the elite level. So, you know, how high do they want to go? But don't restrict what people are able to do. Like, let's see what they can do. Let's support them, empower them every day just to be the best that they can be, because one person's success might just be getting on a tennis court and having a bit of a laugh with their friends. Another person's success is winning a Grand Slam. And then you can go as far as to the International Tennis Federation, where they have policies of classification and how inclusive are we in the current classification system that allows people with all disabilities to be able to compete, in theory, on a relatively fair playing level field. But that isn't the case in our sport. I compete against people who might have a dodgy ankle or a dodgy foot, and yet I'm a T4 paraplegic, so there's a lot of me that doesn't work.
Right.
But those policies have huge impacts on us, like, you know, us minions that just want to play tennis and like just want to try it just for fun, just to be me. So I think everyone has that responsibility. Does that answer your question?
If there's one thing that you would want to say to this crowd about your sport, but also like where you're coming from, I would ask this of all of you guys. What would you want us to know? Or what would you want us to change or do or be more aware of? Or like, aside from the policies within the organizations, like what can we all do to be better humans about creating better role models and opening our brains to where each of you are coming from, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think I always say, try not to judge. Like, we naturally have that in our natures, I think. But try not to judge. Don't put people in a box to think what they can do. Let's see what people can do. Let's support each other to be the best that they can be. So I might struggle with changing a light bulb, but I can definitely pass you the box to do it for me. Like, work together to achieve that little goal. You know, don't put people down. I think we're quite quick to be like, oh, well, you can't do that, but I can. Let's support one another and be kind. And yeah, let's see how we can help each other to be the best that we can be in that day, in that moment, whatever that looks like.
Okay,
so that's what I'd leave you with.
Yes, I like that. Adriana, tell us.
From those ropes.
Yeah, from the ropes.
I think
boulders.
The world that we live in, like in general, not just the mountains. I think sometimes we can be quite selfish people. In general, we can be quite closed-minded. We can find it hard to read and understand other people, and I don't think we try enough to understand. Like my father's in kind of the food industry, and he tells me that, you know, he's been to endless meetings, or he's met new people in the factory, for example, who've just come in. And the amount of people that just kind of brush past and just say, oh, what did you do before? Where did you come from? What did you study? What's your experience? But not like, what kind of person are you? What kind of leader are you? You know, how do you do emotionally? We don't dig deep enough these days. It's all very surface level. So I would say if we can try to understand each other a little better, it would make the world a better place. And I think it would rise up those role models that are overshadowed sometimes, because, you know, there's a lot of introverted people out there who aren't loud enough to speak over the outspoken role models of today. And so if we can ask them, like, you know, what type of person are you? And someone told me about there's kind of different types of leaders and different kind of role models in the world. And I have it written down here. And there's activist, reflector, pragmatist, and theorist. And if we kind of can categorize ourselves into some of those and tell people, oh, I'm an activist leader, I'm very outspoken, I like to set targets, you know, I like to do things pretty instantly, then we can learn more about each other. So I think that's my kind of key takeaway.
Ooh, that's good. Lots of good nuggets on this one. Sarah?
Mine's fairly short compared to my other answer, sorry. The best thing I probably have learned is a quote, and it was like, the best leaders don't show the world their superpowers, they show yours. And that's the most important thing to me, is that actually, if you lead with kindness, and it is difficult because you'll have instant judgment, like everyone has it, or you'll have instant things that are really hard to deliver, like harsh critics, and especially in sport, you're at high performance. But if you lead with kindness and go, this isn't good enough, but this is how we can make it better, that's probably the best thing I could say. And in all walks of life. lead with kindness. If someone cuts you up in the traffic, instead of shouting at them, just be like, oh, they could be in a rush to get to hospital or something. Like, there's always context to every single decision that we make. And if everyone in here chooses to lead with a little bit of kindness, I'm sure it'll be a much nicer place. And the last one is buy a World Cup ticket. So
Or two.
all of them. There's still lots on sale. So
Yes.
bring your whole family.
Yes. Dawn.
Thanks. I would agree with all of the guests. I think that the point is relative to everybody, and we're here to try and build a more inclusive future. The gentleman that was on before, he was actually missing 2 bits on his, what did he say? Dream, believe, achieve. And then once you've done that, you need to inspire, and it needs to be more than inspirational, it needs to be impactful so it's sustainable. And I do want to leave you with a message that I received from a young boy on my team. He's the youngest boy, 14 years old, and we hope to see him in Los Angeles 2028. He's in the S5 swimming category, so he does not have the use of the lower half. And he sent me a message this morning which really touched my heart. Dear coach, I'm shaking a little bit. Standing and speaking, I'm actually sitting. Standing and speaking at Chelsea Football Club is nothing short of iconic. You don't just represent our sport, you represent vision, our vision, strength, and everything we believe in as athletes. It's truly an honor to witness somebody like you lead with such grace, power, and purpose. Your journey reminds us that limits are only in the mind and that greatness is built one step at a time. Thank you for being the example we aspire to follow and the voice we are proud to have beyond the pool. I mean, he's 14. He's a young Saudi boy. And, yeah.
I mean, that's a mic drop right there.
Yeah, his name is Abdulrahman Al Ali, so watch out for him.
We're going to watch out for all of you. Thank you so much to these incredible role models. We are over time, or we're just about over time, but I really want to thank you guys. You're literally some of the coolest people I've ever met. And now we know we have to buy tickets and be kind and get to know each other better. Turn to your neighbors and say hi and give them a hug. And don't judge them. Thank you.
I don't know if you need this anymore.
Okay. JP, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Right. Just a single question. Does anyone else in the room feel as though they have been drinking from a hose of inspiration all day? Right, note to self, when Tara and Laura say, JP, would you mind coming and chairing a session? And you say, yes, I'd be delighted because I'm super supportive. Don't let them not tell you what session you have. Graveyard. Who thought that was a good idea? How do you follow Thayer and that panel? I'm sorry, it is just extraordinary. So, welcome to the best panel of the day, obviously. Thank you. Not because of me, I hasten to add, I stand here today on the shoulders of giants. These women, like every other panelist, are extraordinary. However, I feel vaguely like I'm about to start a joke. What happens when you walk into a room with an English woman, a Scottish woman, an Irish woman? Instead, I'm walking into a room with an athlete, a lawyer, a politician, and a thought leader, and me. Now, if any of you know the television program Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others. That's how we're going to start. The top. Oh, we're down for Kelly. Kelly, take my chair and I'll stand here. Sure. Yeah, no chair required. There we go. Thank you. Don't worry. In fact, I'm happy to stand. Yeah, because I can be out of the way. Transition in life, full stop, is a daunting thing. I read an article recently in The Economist that the generation that has currently entered the workforce can expect to change careers, not jobs, but careers 3 times. Now that's a daunting prospect for me, if I'm honest. I've been in the same career since I was sort of, not that long ago, obviously. But it's a frightening prospect to think that you have to start thinking about where you want to be when you're 15 years of age. And as an athlete, all of us have been inspired today by listening to athletes, from Farah and Sharifa this morning, all the way through to the lineup of women we have just heard from. In their focus in life, it's the field of play. Full stop, end of story. And when that finishes, it's a question mark of an incredible size. 96%, 94%, corrected by Rowena, who corrected me before, 94% of C-suite women come from a sporting background. It's an extraordinary statement, that. 69% of women in leadership roles have come from sport in their world, and they can attribute their success, their ambition, the way that they lead, to having been involved in sport. And yet, it's only 1 to 5% of high-performance athletes who, in their own words, don't feel that they transitioned well. I was asked by an Olympic athlete a number of years ago who was going into her first board meeting, JP, how do I ask a question? Like, raise your hand. The room is quite daunting. And it did take me back. I was put on a committee for a federation that I will not say because it's not fair, but let's say I was on the women's committee. It was my first meeting and I was only 27, so it was approximately 3 years ago. Less of the laughter, thank you very much. And I walked in at exactly 2:15, the meeting was at 2:30. I walked in the room, the chairman was a man. The other 5 members of this committee were men. I turned to my right, drew myself up to my very tall 5'6" on a good day and 5'4" on most other days, and I poured myself a cup of tea. And as I turned round, the chairman's exact words were, and here she is, our little bit of pink. I'll be honest, when you're 27 years of age and you're trying to not suffer from the imposter syndrome, it felt as though someone had shot me. And I kept thinking, actually, sir, I think you'll find that I'm fuchsia, not pink. Sat down and then put my hands that were trembling under the table because I wasn't sure how that would go, and said nothing else in the meeting. Transition from the field of play to the boardroom to an executive role is not an easy thing. Today, we have 5 women who have either experienced it personally, witnessed it at the coalface, and the intention is to have an inspiration from them to understand how could we help those athletes? Could we learn from that transition in another way? And once you're on the dark side, can you provide the inspiration back? My inspiration to all of you is do not change your prescription on your glasses the day before you're chairing a panel and use your phone for your notes. Please forgive me, I'm going to do a lot of this and I apologize. I thought I could be seamless and elegant, but that's definitely not going to happen, unfortunately. Please let me introduce my panel. I said, we decided earlier, we're not going to go down the row. Those women's faces you have in your brochure, and I think a large proportion of you will either recognize them from the field of play or indeed from BBC News one way or t'other. But what we have is people who have executed from strategy to operations, from broadcast to workforce, every facet of the sporting ecosystem. And I'm going to pick on our previous lawyer, previous 100-meter sprinter first. Rowena, when you did all of the broadcast and the organizational thinking around sponsorship deals, etc., and you were working with athletes themselves, what do you think the perception is of athletes transitioning? And, sorry, and I didn't share this with you in advance, so it's a bit of a surprise. Do you think the perception of those athletes' transition changes if it's a female athlete to a male athlete?
There's a lot in there, JP.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, I think the perception of athletes has changed over time. So I started my career as a lawyer in the early 2000s, working with UEFA when I was brought in specifically to disrupt what was then an all-male sales team. And there were a lot of egos in the room, and it was really quite problematic. So I was brought in to bring some different thinking, actually, in that perspective. I think back then we didn't really speak to athletes that much. You know, athletes were seen as assets. They had a role on the pitch, but it was very separate to the organisational aspects of events. I think you fast forward to where we are today, and it's a very different perspective. Athletes, as we've just heard from that amazing panel before, are front and centre of everything we do, and it's been a challenging transition to that space, because certainly, just even giving that voice to athletes has been challenging, because people were like, oh, do we bring political views into this? Do we bring all these sorts of things? Do we give these athletes a voice? Do they know enough about this side of the business? But yeah, of course they do, because they're the ones, and I'm very, very fortunate to have sort of been at every single stage of an event, so even being in the call room with the athletes before they go out onto the stage, onto the field, and understanding what's going through their minds, and probably yes, having been in that position as an athlete, I think has helped me to understand all those things. So I think the perception of athletes has changed. I think it's still, I think they still need that guidance and support. I don't think it's fair for us to just look at athletes and say, oh, okay, you now should be in this role because you've participated in that way. I do think there's a difference for women. I've got a similar tea story to you. I wasn't even said, I was told that I was there to make the tea, actually. But it was a brilliant moment, because I sort of sat down and looked around, and the sort of look on their faces when they realised that I was actually chairing the meeting and was in charge of the outcomes.
Did you make the tea first?
I actually said, no thanks, I don't want any. But, I think there is that sort of support that we need to give to athletes, and especially, I think, for women athletes, because there is still that perception. I'm sad to say that I still, especially on the sales side, I think someone put in a WhatsApp group the other day when the relevant senior team was announced, and it was all men. And I said, well, there aren't that many women on the sales side, because we don't support them on that journey. So we all have a role in helping them to sort of show them what those opportunities are. It's not just being a broadcaster. There's like managing the football team. There's all these other roles that you can do. There's being a lawyer. And actually, I think some of these women are already thinking about that, because we're not the same as the men. Like the men go into sport and know that they've got a career ahead of them. Women are always sort of thinking, what if I don't succeed? Or what if, I can't, I won't earn enough money to have this as a full-time career. So a lot of athletes that I'm sure many of us mentor up here are already thinking, they're playing, but they're already thinking, what are they doing next? And I think having that guidance to support them on that transition is really important, so that they don't find themselves in a situation where they are just bewildered and don't know what to say, because they have so much to give to the entire environment and every aspect of what we're doing, and not just the performance-based things.
Thank you very much. Kelly, as someone who's spearheaded the women's professional game, the optics of a female athlete entering the working environment, what challenges did you face?
Well, I wasn't an elite. Is this one? Okay. I've got no chair, no. Destined not to speak at the end.
Hang on. Oh, that does work.
Can you hear me okay?
No. Try that one.
Right, I've got a chair, got a microphone. What was the question? It's to teach me to rush in at the last second. I'll be speaking at a conference down the road. What challenges in transitioning? Yeah, I think, well, I've sort of seen a big journey of women's football, where originally the players were working full-time and were amateur athletes, and then obviously we've been moving them into professional football over the last few years as full-time professional athletes, and then trying to then sort of run behind that and think they're not going to come out with 6 Bentleys and multi-millions, and we need to be supporting their careers. And then sort of, whilst we're building professional football build sort of a dual career approach. So, embedding our academies alongside education institutes and trying to support, particularly with the PFA, the union, post career support. I think what I've seen is not terribly systemic. You'll know, obviously got people on much closer on the panel to me that can sort of talk about their experiences firsthand. I've been
Please don't jump my question, okay?
The governing body side, trying to sort of to build it. But I think there could still be probably a more kind of systematic approach, an intentional approach to supporting athletes, particularly outside of, yes, there's opportunities to go in broadcasting, there's opportunities to go in coaching and management, but the game needs women from the game desperately in the governance and leadership of the sport. And I think, the athletes aren't a homogenous group. They're not all going to make and want to be great coaches or broadcasters, and they've all got different skills to bring to the table. But from my perspective, the women's game desperately needs more player voices in senior leadership and in the governance of the game. And the player-centred perspective, we talk a lot about being player-centred. There are challenges around truly delivering that. The lack of player voices and players who've come through the game then leading the game, has to be addressed, I think. So I think we've done some good stuff. Lots more to do, but I think around some of the wider roles in the industry, and particularly sort of leadership and governance, really key that we do more.
And can you see what you would put in place to enable that to happen?
Well, I think whether that's sort of multi-sport partnerships, people are going to tell me now they exist, and I'm sure they do exist, and there'll be, just like a lot of things, there'll be lots of little bits of programmes going on, but whether football needs to do more, be more intentional, or sport needs to be more intentional about identifying women who want leadership and governance roles as outside of other careers in the industry, and being really intentional about supporting and placing those women. There are pockets of stuff with pockets of budget, but I think a lot more could be done to make sure that we pull some of those players through who want to take on the leadership of the sport. And they will bring unique and new perspectives that aren't always in the boardrooms, that I think would really add value.
I think I would agree. And I know there's a question which will come at the end from Tracy around how important it is for education of elite athletes as they're coming through their career to recognise what's possible. Because often they don't actually even recognise that they have the opportunity to do something outside of your classic broadcasting coaching, where there's a plethora of opportunities. Which takes me to the commercial manager of Chelsea Football Club. 27 caps.
Sounds very professional.
Thank you very much. 27 caps for England. Carly, as the most recently retired athlete, how did it feel to transition?
It was very scary. Me and Emma Hayes had worked together for a long, long time, and as the game had grown and Chelsea had grown, she always I went back to uni when I was 27. And I played for Notts County at the time, and I did media marketing because I'd been to multiple tournaments and seen lots of sponsorships come on board in the major tournaments, World Cups, Euros, etc., Olympics, and then all kind of disappear after that exciting bit had gone. I never really understood why. So I went back to uni when I was 27. Didn't figure it out, but had a good idea of what we could do. And then when I signed for Chelsea in 2017-18, me and Emma started discussing it. So when I left Chelsea and said I was going to retire, Emma was like, I want you to meet someone, and I want you to help brands and sponsorship basically understand the role of an athlete, the role of a footballer, a football team, and how it's different from men's football. And then I think you can do that in like a commercial management business style. And I looked at her and went, are you sure? And she was like, I think you're going to be perfect. So I met the director at the time who we just employed here at Chelsea. So she was our first women's only director, commercial director, and Zara Al-Qudsi. You might recognise Zara's name. She's now CRO at the new WSL franchise. And yeah, she basically interviewed me at Copper Club in Cobham. I slid in my CV, which said I worked at Kickers, T-Mobile, and played lots of football, which wasn't great. And I did go back to uni. I did have a doctorate in there as well. It was very nice. But again, I was kind of like, this woman's come from the commercial director of Formula One, and she sat there looking at me being like, I've been given some dead athlete retiree that I'm going to have to try. But the minute I spoke to her and basically told her what I wanted to do, she rang me an hour later and was like, I want to employ you. Then I panicked because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have a real job. Also, I was enjoying playing golf and drinking lots of coffee in my 3 months of retirement that I had. But yeah, I absolutely adore it. And I must say, I think going back to what the guys have said so far is, as athletes, we are kind of pigeonholed. I think all that was for me was coaching or a physiotherapist. There were the two things that you could be or would want to do. Or you just became, like most of the girls probably older than me were, teachers, doctors, like just normal jobs, like worked in shops, whatever, which is also fine. But for me, I think that our era, they're probably like the me, Jill Scott, Steph Houghton's, Ellen White's, kind of started getting opportunities in and around the game, which meant that we could kind of tinker and explore what our personalities enjoyed and fitted. And that's one thing I would say is having those experiences throughout as the game grows has been super important, because you don't want to be everyone said to me, why don't you coach, Car? And I loved coaching. If I could be on an hour in the grass with the goalkeepers every day and go home, I'm done. That's great. But the stuff that surrounds it, I didn't really enjoy. I didn't want to do. But this I genuinely enjoy every single day, which is talking about the thing I did for my whole life, from its very infancy of 10 people watching to hundreds of thousands of people watching, millions of people watching, and trying to get people to understand why you would invest in a wonderful, beautiful game and in wonderful, beautiful women, in my opinion, because why would you not want to do that and create something that's so special alongside a brand that's already so relative in so many parts of the world in Chelsea, which is my job. I say invest in women's sport, teetotal, but Chelsea is my job. We have an amazing group of athletes that are my friends, but also now the people that I work for and I want to represent in the best possible way. And that has been my passion point, which means that I enjoy what I do every day and I'm able to access parts of the world because of who I am, what I've done. But also I think because I'm in a room full of people that want to understand why to invest, and I can speak to them as just a person rather than someone who's asking for money, it's a much bigger impact. Now that will go across people that enjoy social, TikTok, BBC, broadcast, whatever it is you want to do. I think when it comes to taking an athlete, if you find them being passionate about something, once we get passionate about something, it's very hard to stop us being very good at it, because that's all we've ever known. So I played football because I loved it and I wanted to be really damn good at it. Now you've took me into this role, I want to be really good at it, and I want my club and my job and me and my director and our CEO to be the best at it and represent Chelsea, but also women's football in the best possible way. I think that's what you get with former athletes, is that drive and that ambition to be the best at whatever we do, and always find ways, because that's all we've ever done in our careers. So that is what I do.
And obviously very well. And does that passion get converted in meetings, and is it received well? So I give an example recently. The AFC, which is the Asian Football Confederation, taking a bit of a focus to Wimena, has launched its inaugural Women's World Cup. It was phenomenal. It was a historic match. The local team, Wuhan, equalised in the 94th minute and won on the 6th penalty. You can imagine the crowd, wait for it, of 12,000 people who came to see the match went mad. I was sitting beside both a young man on my left and a young one on my right, both from Wuhan. Neither could believe they'd attracted the crowd, nor that anyone would come from abroad to support the match. And it was Sarah Booth, who heads up women's football for AFC, who said, I don't think the world is ready for the explosion of women's football. And actually, more importantly, I don't think the world is ready for the explosion of women's sport. So to that point, is that passion received well by those that you're working with?
Yeah, and it's been, I'm not going to lie, it's been difficult. It's the club itself is on a journey, but so is women's football and women's sport. I think Rugby are just about to experience a home tournament where you have an aspiration as a group of women. The Roses will be prepared to win that tournament. Now, is the infrastructure around it prepared for them when they win the tournament? And I think that's what happened when the Lionesses won. Yes, we knew that's what we wanted to do, or they wanted to do and achieve. And did we ever dream it would be as big as it has been? We thought it was going to be big, but probably not that big. So the infrastructure around it is still now catching up with the amount of girls that now want to play football, the amount of clubs and teams and everything that surrounds it and the ecosystem. Have we got enough of those things? Probably not. So I think that there is still that, as much as we're all passionate about it, I think we're still trying to figure out what it looks like and what it looks like going forward and how we harness it, keep the excitement going. And the girls going to the Euros this year will naturally create that excitement again. But then if they don't win, God forbid they don't, but hopefully they do. But if they don't, what does it look like after that? How do we bring it back? How do we keep talking about the athletes as people? How do we make them relatable? How do we connect our Lionesses to our Chelsea players? And I think that's probably been, I think passion is really important, but I think the hardest thing is getting people to convert. I sit in lots of rooms who want to invest in women, but then when it comes to actual number that you put on the table, they're like, ooh. And I'm like, do you really want to invest in women? Because that's what our athletes deserve and cost. And I think everyone sees the excitement around it, but I think there's still that kind of uncertainty with it. So again, drawing data. We spent a lot of our time in the past couple of years drawing data to demonstrate how, by investing in with this club especially, the return is incredible, and I think people are shocked at the return when you put it in front of them. But it is there, and it's just getting in the room with those people to, one, show your passion, but then demonstrate what you get on the return if you are a business or you are a fan or whatever it is you're investing into the game.
Thank you very much. I'm going to actually come to you now, Lisa. However, I'm going to ask you to reflect on your previous job for a minute, and keeping on the football theme. So Lisa was the Executive Director of Services for FIFA across 10 different specialism work streams, so she didn't sleep very much, managed to live through the World Cup in Qatar. When we talk about the passion of the game and the growth of women's football specifically, is your reflection from a FIFA perspective around the women's inspiration and those coming into a leadership position, or indeed even just into the workforce, having experienced it firsthand, do you still think that there's advantages that can be turned on their head to help those young athletes coming into that administrative role?
I think there's a big difference between the Men's World Cup from what I delivered in Qatar versus the experience that I had building and leading a team to deliver the Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. The two were very different, and I enjoyed the Women's World Cup much more.
Why? Can you share the difference?
I think it was about the experience and seeing these young professional women achieve their lifelong ambitions. And I was pitch side when the trophy was lifted with Spain versus England, and seeing the England team this far away from me and the pure devastation in their faces was something where you see what they worked all their careers for. It was very different, and I never saw that in the Men's World Cup in Qatar. I think it was a very different vibe from it. But even also the teams that we built, the enthusiasm from the workforce team of delivering that tournament, they said they enjoyed much more than delivering the Men's World Cup in Qatar. But they both had very different challenges.
So I'm going to be really cheeky and ask you why.
Delivering events in the Middle East is very different than delivering events in the rest of the world. I've been in the region since 2015 and worked on various different mega events, from Expo 2020 to the World Police Games, where I was the only female in a room full of senior police officials who, for the first 2 weeks of the project, didn't speak to me, only through my translator. And then once I proved that I could do what I said I could do, the chairman never made another decision without involving me. And in the Middle East, it's about proving that you can't just say you can do something. You have to prove that you can do it. And that was the same in Qatar for the World Cup. I love the Middle East, and it was a very special experience to deliver the World Cup in a city of 8 stadiums. I drove over 6,000 kilometres in a month versus flying more than that across Australia and New Zealand. But I think the legacy from the Women's World Cup, where you saw every stadium sold out, the numbers that attended the opening matches in New Zealand and in Australia, and how that momentum carried right the way through. They delayed the 6 o'clock news in Australia because of the penalty shootout. So I think then off the back of the Women's World Cup, the legacy of it just propelled women's football to a new level. And I think the next Women's World Cup in Brazil will bring the next aspect to it as well.
And I think the world is joining that inspiration. I mean, if we reflect on, and I'll reflect on Saudi since we're talking about Wimena, 70,000 young girls in 2 years are now playing as part of the school league in football. 30% increase in women officiating football. And a little small personal plug, NEOM FC women's team promoted to the Premier League. Sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I apologise now. For those young women that are coming through, we've talked about mentors quite a lot today, and coaches and people that inspire you, family, community, etc., etc. There are individuals who have sat on boards, and politicians are often looked to for advice. Tasmina, if you were advising a young person now around going into a leadership role with what you have seen, and as the first woman of colour ever elected to the Scottish, European, or indeed Westminster Parliament, I suspect you've got a few insights.
Thank you very much. Can I, first of all, before answering your excellent question, pay tribute to Laura and Tara and everyone involved in organising today. I just think if the world could look on just for a second into this room and see there's so much to hope for, and it's just so lovely to be in this environment. And the fact that Tara had to round people up who were having conversations outside to bring them in was just a testament to the amazing people that have been gathered here. Your question's a great one, JP, and there's such a long answer, or I'll try and give a shortened answer to it, because so much of what's been spoken about at the moment means so much to me, even just starting from your opening remarks about being on a board and what it's like when you're the first woman going into that room. And I would say to women athletes and to women in general, we must value ourselves first and foremost, because what we tend to do, and it's natural, is go into a room and think that we have to be the person that says something that no one else has thought of. It's totally individual, totally new, so that they can appreciate why we are there. But our starting position must be that we are there because we are of worth and we are of value in the first place. And it's likely that people in that room will learn from us. Being in the House of Commons as women of colour, to say the first woman of colour, was challenging and difficult, and I faced many circumstances where I had to make on-the-spot decisions whilst in the chamber, knowing that my 3 daughters were watching me on television.
How old were they?
Well, now they're grown up.
But when they watched you on TV, how old were they?
About like 5 and 8, 10. And thinking when I was challenged, when I was speaking on various issues, obviously by men, one who it was a BBC News World story, barked at me. Do you accept it or do you challenge it? And I thought, well, I can be someone who says it's okay, it's the way it is, or I can be saying, no, that's actually not all right. So I, surprise you not, I took the no, that's not all right path and called them out on it. But the point is, valuing ourselves is very, very important. Challenging is very important, and that work's never going to stop. It's ongoing. And supporting each other to do that is also very important. There's lots of firsts in this room, and I'm just one of many brilliant, amazing stories. Our job, our role, our challenge is to make sure that we don't stop at the firsts. What we can do and what we can achieve for other women in our environments is make sure that we may have been the first, but we made sure that there were women coming up behind us and we didn't pull up the ladder, because I see so much of that across so many different fields. So value yourselves, women, and if you're moving from sport to different worlds, which is what this is all about, it's difficult because it's a completely different environment. However, what you have to offer is what that environment absolutely needs to be successful. So once you move away from the former, what you formerly were, think about what your future is and how your future can benefit and impact people around you. And I think that's just a really important take. As I say, there's been so many inspiring stories. If there's a hashtag for today, it's Be Like Sarah, because she's just absolutely fantastic. Big smiling face. Smiling's good. Being happy is good and encourages people. So there's a lot we can learn from lessons from people here today. But understanding, that was the first thing I did. Right, this is such a woman thing to do, is I looked at everyone's footwear when we sat there.
Yes, I did.
Right? Did you do that?
I was thinking they're all wearing comfy. What am I doing?
Yeah, exactly, right? But I make the point because when I was in Parliament talking about really important things like the disproportionate impact on women of war, a certain newspaper, we're not naming names, a certain newspaper decided to focus on what shoes I was wearing that day and not what I was saying. So I had a choice. Do I wear the footwear that nobody notices, or I just carry on being myself? And I decided to be myself and make sure I found a way that people would start listening to me, and they did.
Thank you. I think you've led me very nicely into the next topic of authenticity and integrity. And when you're told at the age of 25, 26, 27, by the way, you're going to go and be a chief executive, and you think, I'm going to be a chief executive. Good morning. Could we go to the first item on the agenda? When really inside you're going, let's rock and roll. Anybody want tea and coffee? What are we going to get done today? It's a very daunting prospect, especially when you're an athlete who, as you transition, and Carly, you could speak to this much more, which I'm going to come to you. When you get up in the morning and you're an athlete, your day is made out. You know exactly what you're going to do because your coach has said this is what you need to do, this is what you need to eat, when you need to eat it, what you need to do for the rest of the day. You enter the world of business and people sort of make assumptions. And so you, on occasion, people choose to play to be someone they're not. Carly, did you ever find yourself in a situation where you thought, I'm going down an avenue that feels very scary?
Yeah, immediately as I walked into the business room and thought, what am I doing here? No, but I do actually have some funny stories. First of all, exactly that. So my normal training day is that you turn up, I go for breakfast, I get changed, my kit's laid out, I go to breakfast, which is cooked for me. I then go into a meeting and I'm told what we need to do. I then go onto the pitch and I'm led by my coach, and then I come off and I'm told where lunch is, and then I get changed, and then I get told to go in S&C, and then I get to go home. I come into work and I was like, where's my laptop? And they were like, well, have you not gone and got it? And I was like, well, do I do that? Does someone not get that for me? I have to get my laptop. Then I need to get a phone. Then I need to set myself up on a laptop. It never worked, used Outlook. That was fun. Now I have an email address. Okay, that's cool. People are working, but they keep putting WFH. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? Because I'm just in 9 till 5, because that's what I did at football. No one told me I had a day off if I didn't fancy coming into the office. So I could just, I don't know, do a session at home if I wanted to. So quickly figured out that I could spend 2 days at working from home, which is really nice, actually, just not weekends. And yeah, I was just, my calendar, I'd be like, oh, Zara, like, where are we going next week? And she was like, look at your diary, Carly, you're in charge of it. And I was like, okay, sorry. And all that kind of stuff was just so new to me. But again, like, it was like, as athletes or former athletes, we love to learn. That's the thing that makes you be the best you can be, is you're constantly learning. If you just sit on what you did last year, last session, when you were good, when you had a good game, you're never going to get better. You're constantly being chased by the next kid behind you, or the next person who wants your shirt, or the next person who wants to be the best. So you're always having to learn the game all the time, and it's effectively what I had to do here. So I was starting from scratch. And one thing I did do is that I went around this whole business and introduced myself to everyone, because I didn't know everyone, and I knew at some point I was going to need people from different departments, and I couldn't just write on an email like, hi, I'm Carly, can I have this? I just felt that was wrong, and it's what I would have done in a changing room. So I went around and everyone was like, what? And then I'd walk in places like, we know who you are, Carly. And I was, yeah, but like, I do this. And they were like, it's really nice. No one ever comes to see us, and no one does that. And I'm like, but we're a team. Like, I don't understand. Just because I'm a commercial manager at the women's team doesn't mean I'm not going to need ticketing, hospitality, facilities. Like, we're all one team, one club. And that's something that I tried to lead on in our women's department as we've built our team out, is, again, the things that I know are needed for teams to succeed. Luckily, I've been part of like successful teams and seen the teams where we haven't been successful. So the things that I wasn't good at, I asked for help. I haven't got a problem with asking for help. It's another thing you have to do as an athlete. We can't do it all ourselves. Learned that very quickly, tried to do it. Was never going to do that by myself. Had to ask my coaches for help, had to knock on the door, ask my teammates, nutritionists. And without that, I wouldn't have been successful. It's the same in business. I don't think it should be a shameful thing to ask for help from a colleague or different parts of the business to be a better businesswoman. So doing that, and then I got up to speed with things, and I'm still learning now. It's still interesting to go, and I get imposter syndrome going and sitting in with CEOs of huge business and companies, and they go, and I was a footballer, like that's all I am, and they speak to lots of business people throughout the day, but they love to hear about my journey because I'm so different, and they want to know, like, what's it like being a teammate of Sam Kerr, or what's it like being in a changing room or playing at Wembley, and that's stuff that they don't get on a day-to-day either. So they're the things that make me stand out a little bit more and be a bit different. So using my journey and my past is also good to lean into, actually, okay, let's talk business and how am I going to get you into the business? So yeah, I think there's different ways you can use your athlete experience to take into business, and my winning mentality still exists in business now, and I think that's a key thing to have, or a key thing to want to have within your business if you want it to be successful. But then also I'll always be a sponge. I love to learn because I love doing what I'm doing. I think you asked 18-year-old Carly when I was doing my BTEC in sports science and why I only lasted a year. with Jill Scott. Living with Jill Scott was probably the issue. But why I only lasted a year? It's because I didn't really care that much about it. I did sports science because I did sport, but I didn't really care for it. So I didn't last very long. The minute you put me into something I enjoyed, I was going to the library actively. I wanted to learn more. And it's the same in the job. So finding your passion, I think, allows you to open those doors and be more educated yourself. And that's kind of how I've, I guess, used my journey as an athlete, but then into business to hopefully be successful at what I do.
Thank you. I heard a fantastic phrase recently about athletes when they transition, that in the workforce, they are the ones who truly become the students of their industry, because to your point, they're continually wanting to be better. They want to learn what's going to help them. How do they change something that's in front of them that they don't like to see? So yeah, thank you. Rowena, I wonder if you could give us a bit of reflection on being one of 2 female athletes on the Sri Lankan National Sports Council and how it felt to genuinely try and push that ecosystem for athletes and women.
Well, it was, first of all, an incredible experience because I sort of split, like some people in the audience today as well, I split multiple countries. So I grew up in the UK, but I'm very, very much Sri Lankan. I was privileged to represent my country, both junior and senior there. But Sri Lanka has always been an incredibly important part of my life. And having worked at the international level for a long time, I've always felt that federations can be very Western-centric in their approach and very much take that as the norm. And I just felt there was so much from Sri Lanka that I just sometimes felt that here in the UK we could learn for. It's one of the few countries where every child plays sport up to the age of 18. And I just thought that was an amazing achievement to have for a country that's incredibly poor. We don't perform well on the international stage because we don't have the resources that a lot of other countries have. But there's so much, and actually when I took on that role, I was working a lot with UK sport, with the international relations team, because exactly for that reason. It was like, what can we actually learn from each other? But it was a really incredible experience for me. We were appointed during COVID, and it was a new government, a new sports minister who was actually an ex-athlete as well, and really wanted to drive change. There was so much. Our cricket team was also floundering at the time. There'd been this real shift, and so they appointed what was quite a groundbreaking National Sports Council, and we were all ex-athletes. Kumar, who was supposed to be here today, he was also, like him and Mahela, 2 of our most decorated cricketers, people I grew up with, playing sport with. But equally, everyone, we had ex-basketball players, an ex-netball, the other woman was an ex-netballer, but they were also CEOs of businesses. And this is what's something that's amazing in Sri Lanka is that we had the first ever female Prime Minister in the world. We have the highest proportion, well, a very high proportion, not the highest, I can't quote that, of female CEOs. And, you know, when you talked about that 94% stat, which, by the way, is, I did a TED talk on this because I believe so strongly in this. I think that this is why we have so much success on the private side of industry in Sri Lanka, because every child plays sport. So girls and boys play sport up to that age. They learn all of those things that Carly was talking about, those lessons in teamwork, in confidence and resilience, and in learning how to lose and pick yourself up, like that adaptability that Adriana talked about earlier. And so it was amazing to be among this, but the challenge on the public side, it's still very Asian in its approach. So we'd never had women in these roles. So for myself and Kasturi to be appointed, and equally, you know, I was here in the UK, so it was a very, very public process, you know, and I was actually singled out because actually Kumar and I were working on changing the sports law at the time. So it was, for once, I actually felt quite a lot of hope that we were really actually empowered to make change. But it was also very daunting, you know. It was like there was a lot of pressure put on you as a group. I mean, there were still 24 of us, so, you know, and the structure as it was, we were approving teams, you know, and it became very, very bureaucratic, and that was the change that we were trying to make, because we were like, actually, there's so much more that we can be doing. But I think a really important part of that was that we'd all come from very different sports. We'd all played sport in the country. I'd had the luxury, and as a few of them, of having played elite sport outside as well, and having worked in the industry as well. But really being able to take those learnings into it. What transpired was, as much as I love to believe that sport isn't political, we went through a political change, a crisis actually, a few years ago, and half the council were very adamant about stepping down because they didn't want to be seen to be supporting the new government. The other half of us, and I was on the other half, were like, well, we weren't appointed politically, and what happens to the athletes? You know, the athletes are still, like, whoever's in charge of the government, at least having us there, we had strong voices. So we were fighting for something. But we couldn't split because if half of us quit, it would look like half of us are pro the government and half of us are anti. So unfortunately, we all had to step down. But it was a real shame because I think I had so many messages from people I knew, people I didn't know, who just felt this hope that actually, and you know, I think a big part of it was being able to put us on the international stage as well. And you know, it hasn't been the same. You know, they've appointed replacements, but it's not quite the impact. But it was a brilliant moment, and I really felt that it was this opportunity to really give back as well, which I think was important for all of us.
It's an intriguing reflection when individuals who, to use Carly's term, are at passion points, or they live in a passion industry. They do it because they care, not for any other reason. And then by default, they become role models because they're pushing for something that they believe in. And it's whether or not those that are around them as they come through that pathway recognize that sport plays a role in developing that passion and also that determination, which is critical for anyone to be able to achieve. As development director at the FA, when you were looking at the grassroots program and system, did you take into consideration the value of sport as a tool for positive social change and the future leaders that you were building, or was it purely about getting young people on the field of play and enjoying the game?
Both, to be honest. I think, you know, when I came into FA, there wasn't a pathway, and I think the first count of teams was 80 girls' teams. So there was a bit of that, but we knew that with the resources we had at the time, that making those strong connections about the value of what sport does, the impact that it can have that's wider than sport itself, was very powerful in attracting a lot of investment to match our pounds that we were investing as an FA. So we had a whole range of projects that were linked to sort of, you know, wider educational and social outcomes. So yeah, I think a bit of both, really, if I'm honest. I think it was sort of job one was pathway and opportunity, and then as you sort of built that out, it was about trying to really sell the value of that to get more partnerships, to get more funding, to get more buy-in.
And as you move now outside of that sort of formal structure and into sort of subject matter expert for Portus and advising private equity clients and leagues, do you take that knowledge to them that grassroots is as important as elite and it gives them the pathway, or how do you sell what you're trying to explain?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of my job for Portus is advising sort of global clients around either their whole women's football strategy. Well, of course, you know, you're going to be a heavy push on building the base of the pathway and giving girls the opportunities that in many countries, you know, they haven't previously had, and the benefits of that. But even in when we're looking at more sort of professional systems and elite pathways, you have a look at the base, and you can see in many countries that, for example, US have got a massive playing base. So they're sort of, you know, for one, every sort of talented footballer to bring through, there's thousands and thousands of girls to pick from. So you're sort of doing both, really. But I think, you know, we know that that women's, you know, playing sport brings so much, you know, so much more than sport itself, and we're all, I think, sort of ambassadors of that and advocates of that, and trying to drive that message where just playing football for the enjoyment's sake and having fair and equal opportunities isn't enough to get people on side. So a bit of both, I guess.
Thank you. Lisa, when you've had quite an international exposure, I would say, to both athletes transitioning into the workforce. You are heralded across the industry of someone who creates solid, robust teams for both athletes transitioning into the workforce, but equally those who would have liked to have seen themselves on the field of play, but possibly didn't quite make it, so they've chosen their passion industry as an administrator. Can you reflect a little bit on what you think those strengths are between both?
I think from building high-performance teams to deliver, I mean, my athletic career started and stopped in high school, but I was captain of every sports team, and I think that carries through. Going back earlier to the point of who better to know what an athlete needs than somebody who's been an athlete. If I think about the people that I worked with at FIFA, Sarai Barryman is the Chief Women's Football Officer. So she was a professional footballer and now has a huge impact in regards of what happens with women's football. She also humanises FIFA. She is probably one of the funniest people that I have ever worked with, and she did a podcast in New Zealand at the Women's World Cup called Between Two Beers. If you've not listened to it, listen to it, and it talks about, she talks about her story, about how she ended up in senior leadership in FIFA, and swears every other word. You've worked with Sarai, so, but she is an absolute pleasure to work with. But I think going back to the point of who knows better than what an athlete needs than an athlete. Plus, the sports ecosystem is huge. FIFA has over 60 different functional areas that contribute to delivering men's and women's World Cups, some of which that you wouldn't even think would have that role, all which bring different skill sets. I didn't come from the football world when I joined FIFA. And you talking earlier about you changing your career 3 times. I started out as a secretary and then ended up in facilities management. As part of my role, and that was for a sports brand, that was everything that nobody else wanted to do, including a conference. And that was how I then got into the events world. Developing on from that, they sponsored one of the international federations for the Olympics. And my first exposure to major sporting events was working at Athens 2004. I remember sitting at the opening ceremony going, oh, I'm at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games and I'm being paid to be here in my very early 20s. To then my role in FIFA. From that very first moment that I applied for the role, that job was mine. And everybody asked after I got that role, which was a series of 10.5 hours of interviews, over 5 interviews over 3 months. Who did you know to get your job? I didn't know anybody in FIFA to get my job. I got it off my own merit. And if I can do it, anybody else can. And I think from that, and I get a lot of messages from young girls and women on LinkedIn about how did I end up in my career. And for me, any female in senior leadership owe it to the next generation to help mentor them, to bring them through, so in order that they can be the next senior leadership in the sports industry.
Thank you.
I thought you said something really interesting about only the athletes really know what the athletes need, and that is so true. When I was trying to steer the Women's Super League through COVID, and there was pressure from the media to try and come back immediately. The men were coming back, and everything was like, oh, we're going to do this testing, we're going to do these protocols, we're going to get this money from the government, and head down. And then I called the captain's meeting, they went, we don't want to come back, we don't feel safe. And I went, oh my God, oh, okay, right, okay, different strategy. And we've been so buried in it that, you know, the moment we heard the player voices, we completely changed strategy, fortunately, not too far down the line. And, you know, not often enough is there a systemic sort of way of getting those voices into the conversation. So I think absolutely spot on.
It's interesting that you both reflect on it, and your comment earlier was how difficult it is to be truly athlete-centric and ensure that those voices are heard in a strategic way. We heard earlier on from the Deputy Minister, Adwal Arifi, there are 3 women in Saudi Arabia who have been instrumental in enabling women's football, and all of them came from 5 women who kicked a ball around behind the scenes, and they have grown an industry. We see with us today, we have a skier, a high-performance skier from Saudi Arabia sitting in our midst. Who would have ever thought that we'd be saying things like that? There are women across the world that are inspirations, and if we listen to their voices and what they need to be able to continue, 2 young children, how do you take that next step? How do you think about your kids and what you're trying to do on the field of play and the fact you'd like to be the chairman of the board and. You walk in as a commercial manager for the first time, and how do you know how to behave? Did we prep them? Did we take them in that direction? Are they ready for that transition? Because we seem to be the only industry that expects our high achievers to give back and know what they're doing outside the field of play. It's a curious observation. There's no other industry. You don't see someone who makes widgets in a factory and does it to the best of their ability and is the best widget maker going onto the field of play and trying to score a goal against Carly. It's just an interesting observation, isn't it, about the industry? I'm running out of time. Tasmina, could I just bring you back in for one final question? For someone who has seen both politics, boardrooms, had a lot of exposure to women, and obviously feel very, very passionately that you have a job to bring women with you, what would be your advice to young female athletes who are considering retiring and entering the dark side?
That if they enter the dark side, it will become the light side.
Good advice.
And to say that they are perfectly placed to make that transition, and there are people around who are happy to support that, because they are born leaders, absolutely. Their sport has given them a discipline. They understand about discipline. We, women, understand about discipline, about learning. We're not afraid to learn. We're team players. All of these things are positive for us in boardroom scenarios, and therefore we have so much to give. And if I may just give a nod, you gave me actually quite a smooth transition into one point.
I did it on purpose.
I wanted to make, which is about Muslim women in sport and hijab-wearing women in sport, because they are absolute role models for the Muslim world. For Muslim women face in all walks of life serious misconceptions about who we are, what we stand for, and some level of oppression which doesn't exist. And it's really great to see women in sport demonstrating that, and so well. And you have to manage these conversations. There was a period, and it's ongoing, of questions about, women who wear hijab. And one of our jobs, a job I saw as a parliamentarian, was to change the framing of that question. So I actually had a debate in Parliament on national hijab. There is a National Hijab Awareness Day. So I deliberately had a debate in the House of Commons on it, but I framed it as simply saying, do you believe that a woman has a right to wear what she wants? And nobody can say no. Not really, not if they're brave. So they said yes. So it is women's choice to wear what she wants to wear. And if you see things through that prism, it's very important. So I think into the world of boardrooms where really serious decisions are made about the future of sport, where funding might come from, and any other decisions at corporate level, it's very important to have women in the room who have life experience, women also who may be mothers, because that's another thing we have to touch on. When in your career are you having children? And so, but these are all positives. So I would say to women in sport looking for a career afterwards, the doors are open for you. There's a huge support network that can even gather from the women in this room. You're absolutely in the right place to be doing it. This country and beyond, all the countries that are represented here, the MENA region needs for you to be doing it, and therefore you must do it. And there's never a right time for anything, I would say. Once you've done your sporting life, you just get on with it and you just do it, and you just fly with it. And then it'll work, because there's lots of women who will be inspired by you, and it's necessary for you to do so. And the younger generation, just for their benefit, they also need really good role models. Leadership comes naturally from sports people, because they're successful in their careers. People feel that they know them. The ordinary people feel that they know them and trust them. And so they're already ahead of the game in how they are perceived by people. That should therefore be used to their advantage.
Thank you very much. As one of the ordinary people, I have learned a great deal this afternoon. Thank you very much to the 5 of you. I have got 3 minutes and 27 seconds left. There was a pre-question. Tracy. Have we got a mic we could get to Tracy? Would that be all right? Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you, Jan. And Carly, I just want to say I heard every word you mentioned earlier on about the first few days in your workplace. I'm a mind management coach, and I support people with that career elevation and career transition. So what Carly mentioned earlier on, I see it often in my sessions. So when we look at career transition, I'm still surprised about how discombobulated it still is within the various sports industries. Now, thinking about the high rates of divorce and bankruptcy within the men's sports, I hosted my first player care webinar in 2019, when back in that time, I think divorce and bankruptcy was about 40%, and I know the divorce rates have gone higher post-career. For some reason, though, I don't feel that that's going to be the same case for women's football. Sorry, guys. But on a serious note as well, when we look at, this is 6 years on, and there's still a lack of consistency within the education around managing these pivotal transitions within the sports industry. And it's difficult to understand your purpose and your why within the next phase of your career, when you're still in this career and you need to keep your eye on the ball. So I know from my coaching sessions, people find it difficult to balance that. So I feel that there's a big educational piece missing for the career piece itself. So rather than waiting for that transition, I feel that there's an educational piece missing throughout the career piece, which I do have the answer and it's sat on my laptop, but that's not a sales pitch, sorry. So my question...
After. Everyone go and see Tracy for coffee after.
Yeah. So my question is, what strategies or initiatives do you believe that sports organisations could prioritise better to create a more consistent and effective framework for athlete transition?
Carly?
Big old question. No, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and being one of the older players, knowing that I was going to have to work and I needed to invest back in my career, when the youngsters started coming through, the Aggie Beaver Jones, and they get excited, they get a little bit of money, and they start turning up with their Louis Vuitton wash bags and their Gucci belts. And I'm like, guys, what are you spending your money on? Have you invested it? But I think it's just even an education from some of the older players, because again, you're so invested in just winning and then the successes that come from that. And it's really nice to finally have some money and get a nice car or buy property. So at Chelsea, we're trying to put things in place, whether that's we're linking with either banking or wealth management to make sure they're investing the money, and are they looking after themselves and how are they investing in their futures. Careers are very short in sport. I was lucky enough to do it for a long time, but only professionally, probably for about 10 years. Some of their careers will be that long, maybe shorter, depending on their injuries. So it's trying to make sure they're also upskilling themselves along the way. So what are they passionate about, and how can we as an organisation help them? Now we have kind of people in place like myself, like Julia, who's the commercial director, Aki, who's our CEO. We have a social media manager, marketing manager in the women's game. So we spoke to the girls that did their ACLs, like when they're coming back off their ACLs and they've got more time, do you want to come into the office and see what we do? Do you want to see how we work? Is it something you're interested in? Try and sit with different parts of the business to see if anything takes your fancy. Or do you want to just do your A license, which the PFA do really well? PFA go into the clubs, offer their B license, their A licenses if they want to be coaches. But I think that needs to be on a broader scheme. That's probably something the PFA are looking into. Is it's not just probably coaching and physio that they should be offering. There's all these other, and I think they do media as well. I think they should try and look at different kind of parts of the organisation of a club. We have lawyers, we have hospitality staff, we have catering, we have all these different points that we don't really talk about that are around the ecosystem of the game outside. So then it's an education piece internally, because even the girls don't know what some of the people do when we bring them in. They're just like, oh, what do they do? I'm like, oh, they're in charge of merchandise. Like, well, how do you get into that? That means that could I do something like that? And you're like, yeah, you could if you wanted to. But again, it's explaining to them. So a lot of it's an education to them as well. And I'm constantly sounding like their mum or their big sister, because I'm like, what do you mean money? What are you spending it on? Are you doing classes outside? And a lot of them are. A lot of them have their businesses. They go back to uni and they're doing stuff like that. And I'm very passionate that I want them to have something outside, because even mentally, you're so consumed, especially at a club like ours, with winning and pitch. Sometimes it's nice to just take yourself away from Chelsea and the carnage that is, and just put your head in a book, or put yourself in, I don't know, learn to do a nail technician if you're into nails, or I don't know, whatever it is you are. Sometimes it's good to have that escape, because football won't be there forever, and it also won't always bring you joy. It's joyous when you're winning. It's joyous when you're playing well, but that is not consistent for 10 years or 15 years of your career. So when it's not going well, have you got something to fall back on that is a passion point that does bring you joy? And that could be just something as little as going back to education, investing in your money outside of it, giving back to your family, going to doing a charity, I don't know, whatever it is, but giving the girls the tools to be able to feel like they can do that whilst they're still playing is really important to a club like ours.
Can I just add to that as well? I think there can be a lot better collaboration between sporting organisations. I mean, every athlete will transition. That's a known. And I think up until now, I think it's great that Chelsea's doing that. A lot of clubs don't. They just focus on their playing careers and what they're doing right now. I am an ambassador for the Switch the Play Foundation, which is a charity focusing on supporting athletes in their transition phase, but they also do work with athletes pre that, to your point exactly, like we don't just wait for the point when they're deciding to retire, because then you do have that panic, what's my purpose, what am I going to do next? And I think, there's a lot of different player associations of all the different sports, and actually I think if they all work together, there's a lot more that we can do. There's resources out there. Barclays have Eagle Labs Academy, which help entrepreneurs. That's accessible by athletes. Like anyone can get these resources. But if we all pull together, I think we'll find there's so many resources out there already. It's just that people don't know they're there. And so I think that is on the sports organisations to really be much more collaborative in the space.
I feel there's a nub of an idea here, you two.
We keep talking about it. We need to talk.
Kelly, did you want to add?
No, I think I said it earlier, really, to be honest, about I think it needs to be more systemic. It needs to be, I think you said, somebody said pigeonholed earlier, and that we've been sort of, athletes been pigeonholed into certain elements, but not getting support to take that broader view and see the broader options. And the induction was hilarious. I'm still laughing at your first day, Carly, in your job, and I'm sort of thinking, where's the buddying, the mentoring, the inductions, how are we supporting these athletes to
the handover?
So plenty more to do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy. We've got time for one last question. Laura's giving me the yes, even though I'm in red time up here.
So we've talked a lot about, obviously, the athlete to leader, but what's been really clear from me in this panel is there's so many opportunities to work in sport, even if you're not able to compete at an elite level. I've got a 9-year-old girl, so I'm very much looking to how do I inspire into something that's been my passion. But also, she's not allowed Instagram. She's not allowed Snapchat. She's not allowed TikTok. She's 9. I don't trust her yet with it. How do I tell her these stories? How do I inspire her to look at a career in sport, maybe playing, but to become a coach or a physio or a marketing person or a lawyer? How do I inspire her from what I've heard today when I won't give her Instagram?
Right, Instagram less society. Go for it, Rowena.
Well, I was going to just say athletes are overachievers, but already planning that at age of 9 is pretty impressive.
I think one way perhaps, and I totally understand why you want to keep it away from social media, I think more documentaries, more stories about people who have achieved that you can safely watch on television is a really good way to inspire young girls, and I hope to see more of that. There has been some of it, but clearly not enough of it. And as you say, there are many opportunities, also opportunities, as I became a board member of Scottish Women in Sport. It's difficult being a Scot and being in sport. You do know that. We have minimal success. We try, we have the spirit. But again, that's an opportunity to give, Carly's going to come in with that. Go on.
A certain Kim Little did win even though I'm at Chelsea, she did win a Champions League at the weekend. Very successful Scottish football player.
We'll take it. So there are so many ways, even getting involved in boards, particularly around young girls, which is what the focus was on in Scottish Women in Sport, was where are we losing young girls' interest in sport? What is happening in schools that the interest is taken away? And a lot of that is because social media is sucking up the brain span of our young people, of our children, when we want them to be exercised on something more positive. So I do hope, I do films and TV myself, we should think about making more positive programmes that you can watch safely with your children.
Can I also tell you about the organisation Rebel Girls? It's actually an American organisation, but they've also branched out to create Rebel Girls Sport, and their motto is building confident young girls. And they tell stories in Once Upon a Time. So you've got Michaela Schifrin's Once Upon a Time story about how she started out as an athlete and became one of the most decorated skiers of all time. But they do that not only just for athletes, but they do it for politicians, for eminent women in society. But they do it in a way that the girls can relate to. They're now branching into sport to do it, to expand also, to tell the stories in sport and to communicate how to watch sport in a different way as well. But I think that there are a lot of initiatives out there like that are just telling stories off social media as well.
Is she allowed YouTube? Yeah, I don't know whether we're on that, but like we've tried really hard with a podcast, and that's not just to introduce the girls and their stories, but actually the people behind that. So that is the staff. I think I'm on last year's, but kind of again just opening out the business. So how do we operate as a business, and who are the people behind the team as well as in the team, and their stories and how we got to this place. A lot of the guys come from men's football into women's football, and why this question's asked, but a lot of the women, how did they end up at Chelsea, and what journeys were they all on singly or collectively. So I think we've tried to give an insight into those kind of roles and responsibilities that exist in our ecosystem. But again, we're trying to grow that out. It's very difficult when, to be fair, these jobs have just started existing as well for a lot of the team, which is really exciting. But I think there's a lot more opportunities. I think we've discussed it internally of talking about how a business is run and what women do within that business. We have I was surprised at how many women are actually within the Chelsea business in a nice way. It was really nice to see kind of so many women in and around. But how do we tell their stories, their journeys? How did they end up? A lot of them come from lawyers into directors into different ways, because the women's side of the business didn't exist, and now it does. So now they get to do two things that they're really passionate about. But how do we bring those stories to life and put them on a platform where people can access from all different ages and bring them to life? So it's something we're very conscious of, but we're trying to build out. And again, I don't know if our little podcast exists on Kids Podcast, but it's maybe something you could watch with her as a little bonding session of like the athletes and obviously the careers that surround it.
Yeah, we just add to that. I think when you're encouraging young people into sport, it's fantastic to see the role models and the success. I think the podcasts that are probably the most enlightening are those that address that it's okay to lose. And how do you deal with being frightened for the first time when you walk out to try a new sport and you've not done it before, but your friends are really good at it? It's probably worthwhile trying to balance a bit. And I often find that high performance athletes are the best in articulating loss and in articulating how they've overcome fear. Could I please say thank you to an extraordinary panel? It's not very often that you get to spend a day doing this, and this is a work day. How lovely is that? I would like to leave you with one thing, if that's all right. Sorry, Katie. And I'm only going to do it. Sadly, I chose to do it when I could read well with the right glasses. So if I stumble, I apologize now. I was talking to someone who recently retired, who's currently going through transition and has been asked to chair an organization and is terrified. And she sat down and said, I'm trying to learn how to deal with my fear and I don't know what to do, but I found this. It said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages, and in front of her sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear into forever. But there is no way back. The river cannot go back. No one can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that's when the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but becoming the ocean. If you're a river or you're already in the ocean, encourage those who are still the river. And if you're in the river, look up, because there's lots of people in that ocean asking you to come and join them. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you.
I'm actually I'm leaping in here on stage for a reason, and it's to make sure, don't worry, I was told that I had a 30-minute slot only today. Yesterday I was told it was 10 minutes, and I've decided not to fill the 30 minutes. You'll be pleased. So it's only got 10 minutes, so I thought if it's easy if you guys are available just to stay for 10 minutes to stop everyone leaving, that would be great. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. Salam alaikum, and it's a great privilege to be speaking to you all today. It's quite the challenge to provide a wrap-up that does this day justice. I want to start this closing speech, however, by sharing my thanks again to all the brilliant, inspiring and change-making speakers who have been here before me on this stage today. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you. A big thank you again to Tara and Laura for their unwavering drive in pulling together these globally unique events and putting women directly at the heart of their work. And thank you again to all the forward-thinking sponsors supporting Wimena and committing to raising up women in and through sport. But most of all, and I mean this, a thank you to all of you taking the time to come here from near and some from very far to connect, learn and be part of our growing global community. I began my journey in the Middle East through Newcastle University and our partnership with Princess Noura University in Riyadh. We were simply looking at sharing good practice around women in sport, and I never would have thought in a million years that that would have led me to be delivering women's skills, education, leadership, empowerment pretty much every 6 weeks out there in the region for the past 3 years. But I'm really, really glad I made that first journey and first visit with my Vice-Chancellor, because that moment and that visit has completely changed my life professionally and personally. We now deliver through the University of Newcastle in Riyadh, Dammam, Jeddah, Alula and Medina. We've also grown through empowered leaders into provision in Kuwait, UAE, Oman and hopefully, inshallah as they say, expanding to Qatar and Iraq. I can genuinely tell you that every time I visit the region, I see change. And the rate of that change is almost unbelievable. And any of you who have been there will see that every single time. I've had the privilege of meeting and working with some of the most amazing trailblazers in women's sport in the region, and I'm unashamedly going to take a moment to name a few of them now to recognise their invaluable contributions to our cause. Princess Lavielle, who was mentioned by Karen earlier today, Lina Al-Mayena, the legend and founder of Jeddah United, Shayma Al-Husseini, the Saudi Sports for All CEO, sports federation leaders, mentioned earlier again, such as Arij Al-Mutaqabbani, Saudi Tennis, Professor Aynash, she was the former president of Princess Noura University, and she only in the last couple of weeks has been appointed as Deputy Minister of Education for Saudi Arabia, and that's a very welcome appointment. Indeed, there's a clap there. Fatma Hayat from the Kuwait Olympic Committee, Marahab Al-Shamari, who spent 20 years heading up women's sport in the Kuwait Public Authority for Sport and has seen it through some significant challenges. Sheikha Amna and the Al-Shamsi sisters in the UAE supporting the creation of the first Women's Sports Council in Ras Al Khaimah, and other inspirational female leaders across Oman, Qatar, and so many others that I don't have time to list today. And also following on from a mention in the role model panel discussion earlier, I don't want to forget the strong male allies I've met along my MENA journey who are so critical to this time of change, including Sheikh Abdullah Al-Sharki. He's the Vice President of the Asian Bodybuilding Federation, but a constant and visible supporter of his daughters taking part in sport on social media, and that has been incredibly powerful in the UAE. His brother, Sheikh Mohammed Al-Sharki, the Crown Prince of Fujairah, who set up and fully funds a martial arts club that buses in over 1,000 children a week to the centre, mixed training and competition, because he saw it as a way to bring the two genders together so that people understand each other and respect each other at a young age, so that his emirate in Fujairah, the community, will be built and founded upon equality. And of course, Ali Al-Dajani, who I spoke about last year, my fav, the Saudi Rugby Federation president, who insisted on launching boys and girls rugby at the same time across schools in Saudi, leading to the first full contact Saudi women's rugby team. And as an ex-England rugby player, you can imagine how close that is to my heart. I'm consistently surprised and inspired in equal measure through my work across MENA at the huge efforts taking place to accelerate access for women to opportunities that may have long been withheld. There is a real hunger for education, skills development, competition and success. I'm truly honoured to play a small part in supporting these endeavours through sharing lived experience and expertise, and I couldn't be happier to see so many others joining us in that role. Over the past 3 years, though, it's become extremely clear to me that I have a responsibility, along with everyone else in this room that is part of the women's sport landscape in MENA, to share the stories of success, the examples of community impact and real-world change taking place in the region. We've heard today from trailblazers who were there at the start of this seismic shift in society, and to them we owe great respect and gratitude for their passion to ignite the chain reaction that we now see all around us. We've been inspired by the phenomenal role models that are making the most of every opportunity created for them, continuing to challenge expectations and raising aspirations of future generations. You will likely all have heard the phrase, you have to see it to be it, and that couldn't be more relevant in this region, where women from all walks of life need to see themselves as part of this new world of sport and active well-being, creating active families, healthy schools, community clubs, performance pathways, and leading to the possibility of representing their country on a global stage. We've also learned about the path ahead of us, what will mould the future of sport through technology, AI, the power of imagery, in the evolving nature of fandom and growing commercial value of women's sport. These areas of development highlight even more the specificity of data and insight needed to fully engage with women and girls as the participant, workforce, fans and investors of the future. We've heard about the catching up we in the UK have to do to match the equal pay policies implemented by Saudi Arabia across all of their national teams. I'm blown away by how quickly that they've determined that this is the approach that is appropriate, fair, and genuinely reflects and recognises the commitment required by all athletes. And I really hope that this isn't glossed over or lost within the messaging and narrative around the evolution of sport in Saudi Arabia that we hear so often here in the West. We all know that we continue to face challenges as women living through the legacy of a male-dominated global sector. But together we will use our learnings and our mistakes, and I say that again and again, to guide the next generation to lead a world that expects sport to be a safe and supportive space for everybody. This journey of women's sport shared with us throughout today has left us wondering what each of our roles might be in the next chapter of this ever-changing story. I'm not sure we will know the exact answer to that yet, but I do know that we will all be needed in taking the next steps on this unmapped road. We will not be bound by the route taken by men's sport, but we should see the value in being tethered to the lessons learned by those women who have opened up the map for us. Our destination is not defined, and that is because we will continue to push the boundaries, to challenge expectations and break barriers. But one stop along the way that we can all agree on is to see MENA women taking their place in global leadership, on international podiums, and becoming the visible role models to raise the aspirations of the generations that will be our navigators of the future. We all come from such a rich range of social, cultural and sporting backgrounds, and so when we bring all that lived experience together, we create a very powerful community to create collaborative solutions to these shared challenges. So, as we come to the close of this great day and full of hope, I want to thank you once again for being part of this journey. And my challenge to you is to leave this event more informed, inspired, and motivated to use your networks and communities to share the real narrative of the rapid development of women's sport and empowerment across MENA and how our connectivity truly makes a difference. So, until we meet again, which I'm sure we will, let's make sure we continue learning, driving forward and shaping the future of women's sport together. Thank you very much. And there is an email. You are going to receive an email with a survey on that. And that's not your usual survey, did you like the food? Okay, that's a survey that actually asks about outcomes and potential topics for Wimena to work with you on in the future. So thank you again and safe journey home.